And it is the top of the 10 o'clock hour. You are listening to 90.3 WMSC in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. It is Sunday, July 26th. Yes, it's not Wednesday. It is Sunday, but you are still listening to SMC Sports right here on 90.3 FM. I am Sean McChesney. We had to postpone Wednesday's show to today. I had a prior commitment to deal with, but we are on the air today. New start time for this week. We will be back on the air Wednesday, August 5th, however, because I'll be on vacation for the next week. So this will be the only time we'll be on a different day, so your schedules won't get rearranged that way. We got a lot to talk about today, a lot of baseball to cover. Hall of Fame inductions are today, so a lot of the guys for Cooperstown are going in today. Mets and Yankees to talk about. We have a lot of New Jersey Jackals to talk about. We'll play our interview with Michael Cohen that I conducted last week. We will play that on the air later. A lot of football to talk about, a lot of college football. A lot of great things to talk about on the show today, but right now I want to start with my New York Mets and the game that I saw last night. Now, let me just paint the picture going into last night's game. Mets went into last night going, I believe, was it 2-8 since the break. Now, I said last week that the Mets had to jump on these last 10 games. You know, three with the Cardinals, 3 with the Nationals, all 6 on the road, and then 4 against the Dodgers at home. Now, the St. Louis series I know was tough, and that was a tough series to win, but the Washington series was very doable. I believe the Mets easily could have won the Washington series. That was on the pitching, though, at the end, with Bobby Parnell having his meltdown when it came into the last game. Then they go into the Dodgers series. The Mets get nearly no hit by Kershaw on the first night, and then killed 7-2 on Friday night. Mets are now 33-16 at home and 17-32 on the road. They lost 4 of their 6 on the road after the break, which were 6 games that the Mets had to do well in, and they didn't. And I said last week, it could have easily been the end of the New York Mets. Easily. Those 6 games, and including these 4 at home against the Dodgers, which, you know, besides last night, we'll get into that, the Mets haven't done well at all. No run support. And the pitching's been great, besides on a few occasions, but there was no run support. And I said last week, it was hands down easy to explain that if the Mets didn't do well in these 10 games, they were going to be done. Sure enough, now the Mets are 50-48. They were 47-42 at the break. And then they come back, and now last night, the Mets put a whipping on the Dodgers. The run support showed up in a big way. And everybody contributed. Mets beat the Dodgers 15-2 last night. 21 hits. Matt Harvey looked like Matt Harvey again. Everybody except for Plawecki exploded in the lineup. Mets went 9 for 16 with runners in scoring position, and they left 11 on base. So they could have definitely drove more runs in. But it just goes to show that, you know, with 11 guys left on base, that meant everybody was getting on base. And look at some of the guys who exploded last night. Kurt Neuenhuis, 4 for 4, a double, 4 RBIs. Conforto, 4 for 4, 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 RBIs. Kelly Johnson, his Mets debut, 2 for 6, home run and an RBI. Daniel Murphy, 2 for 4, home run, 3 RBIs. Matt Harvey, 2 for 4 with a double and 2 RBIs. Lucas Duda, 2 for 6, 2 home runs. Duda hasn't hit a home run since AAA. It feels like that's how long it's been. He hit 2 last night. Juan Uribe, 1 for 2. Terry Collins shook this team up, and it's about time. He told the guys after the Uribe and Johnson trade, and we're going to get more in depth in a minute, if you're not hitting, you're not playing. And it's really about time he showed he had a voice. It is really about time. Now, I believe if the Mets can hit Greinke well today, that Collins shook them up. Because looking at the Mets' schedule, and I'll get more in depth in that later, the Mets have a light August and a light September where this team could still be in the playoffs. Now, when they get into the playoffs, who knows? But with the schedule they have in August and September, it is doable that they can win the division. It's doable they can win the wild card. But for that to happen, the pitching has to stay consistent, which it has the entire year. Probably still the best pitching rotation in baseball on the worst team in the majors right now who's still over 500. But for that to happen, the offense has to stay as consistent as they were last night. And it's about time that Terry Collins finally threatened his team. Now, trade deadline July 31st. Sandy Alderson has went public and said he's not done. He went out to Atlanta, acquired Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson for a few prospects that aren't really that important. So it proved that Sandy Alderson didn't want to give up the pitching. And there was reports that Justin Upton was on our radar, and it was reported that we were gonna trade for him, but San Diego wanted top prospects, and of course they did. You know, San Diego, with the year that they're having, I believe they need more pitching. So of course they wanted our guys, but we weren't gonna give it to them. So we let Justin Upton go. We signed Uribe. We signed Johnson. They provide great depth on defense. Uribe will provide great defense and consistent offense while Wright is gone. And Kelly Johnson showed what he could do off the bench. You know, Kelly Johnson got the start last night. He went 2 for 6. Crushed one into the Pepsi porch. And my dad called it. He said Kelly Johnson's going to hit a home run tonight. Going into, actually now updated stats. Juan Uribe, 8 home runs, 23 RBIs, batting .272. Kelly Johnson around the same, 9 home runs, 34 RBIs, .275 batting average. The Mets made these moves, I believe, for 2 reasons. They don't have much money, and they don't want to say goodbye to their pitching. But now looking at last night, again, you showed why these 2 were effective. And now you can make the case of last night, oh, well, the Mets pounded a rookie, this and that. 2 words, Chris Heston. Chris Heston comes into Citi Field, San Francisco Giants, throws a no-hit, 5-hit shutout. So don't make the argument that the Mets pounded a rookie, because the Mets showed that they could do just as bad against rookies. They got no hit against one about a month and a half ago, or, you know, not even, literally like a month and 2 weeks ago on our own home field. So we have shown you in 2015 what a rookie can do to the New York Mets offense. So don't make the excuse that the Mets pounded a rookie last night. Now, you could say Greinke comes back today and shuts out the Mets. You could say that. But don't say that the Mets offense exploded because they hit a rookie. Because rookies have shown what they could do against the Mets this year. The Mets offense lit up last night. They finally woke up. And for them to make the playoffs now, they have to stay awake. But again, 3-9 since the break. That's not the start that you wanted in the second half. 2012 was very similar to the start that the Mets are having right now. It started in Washington and St. Louis in 2012. I think just Washington. But 2012 was very similar to this second half start. Very similar. Mets went into Kansas City All-Star Game 500. And in 2012, they had one of their worst seasons in their franchise. And why? Because they couldn't get out of the gate after the All-Star break. And the Mets going 3-9 since the All-Star break is not the start that you wanted. The St. Louis series was winnable, although very hard to win. But I feel that the Mets had the first game in the palm of their hands. And, of course, John Mayberry Jr. was designated for assignment to make room for Uribe and Johnson. And for reasons of striking out with runners on the corners in a 3-2 count, he struck out on a 3-2 fastball up and in where he likes it. He can't hit righties for his life. Lefties he can't hit anymore. And now you're seeing why he got sent down. The St. Louis series, I feel, was winnable. The Washington series was definitely winnable. But the Mets lose 4 out of 6 on the road. 4 out of 6. And then they come home and just get embarrassed the first 2 games against the Dodgers. Now, last night was great. And as a Mets fan, you can only hope that that is what the future has in store for this team. You can only hope that's what the future holds. But let's face it, people, the first 2 games against the Dodgers were embarrassing. Kershaw nearly threw a perfect game. Friday, the Mets got killed. Last night, Dodgers got killed. Matt Harvey threw back like he threw in April. And you know what? Going into last night, I was a little skeptical about Matt Harvey. I wasn't sure what Matt Harvey was doing. He hasn't pitched well lately. You could say it was the effects of Tommy John surgery. You could say he wasn't focused. You could say he shaved his beard off. You know, you don't know what you could say about Matt Harvey. But ever since I would say maybe May, Matt Harvey has not pitched like himself. He's only 9-7 this year. Where in the month of April was absolutely tearing it up. He embarrassed the Nationals in his first start back in nearly a year and a half. He embarrassed, well, he didn't really embarrass Philadelphia, but he pitched great in his first start at home against Philadelphia. But Philadelphia is just an embarrassment in itself. Matt Harvey pitched great in the month of April and even a little bit of May. But ever since then, for whatever reason, Matt Harvey has not been Matt Harvey. Last night, Matt Harvey was finally Matt Harvey again. And I feel that's what the clubhouse needed. Matt Harvey, I feel, is the leader of this pitching staff. You could say it could be Bartolo Colon on experience, but let's face it, people. Bartolo Colon only has maybe a year or two left with this team. I actually believe he's a free agent going into November. So, who knows about Bartolo Colon? Zach Wheeler's coming back. You know, a lot of people want Zach Wheeler in this trade, and you know what? If the Mets would have traded Zach Wheeler, personally, I don't know how I would feel about it. Because you have to remember, the Mets are only talking about not trading away these four guys, but you remember Zach Wheeler is that unspoken about fifth guy because he went down with Tommy John this year. But for teams who are looking for a future, who are looking for a guy who can lead their starting rotation in the future, Zach Wheeler's a no-brainer. Zach Wheeler has, or the Mets have been contacted saying that some teams want Zach Wheeler. You look at teams maybe like Colorado and Arizona who need pitching in the future. You know, Colorado, best prime example, maybe Philadelphia as well. You know, they need a pitcher that they can rely on. Now, of course, Zach Wheeler isn't expected to be back till like next July. But for teams who want a future, Zach Wheeler's your guy. I don't know how I would feel about Wheeler leaving. Because right now I'm just focused on Harvey, DeGrom, Matz, and Syndergaard. Those are the only guys I'm focused on right now. Now, I'm very surprised that Neese and G aren't gone yet. Very surprised. You know, and you know what? I feel with the Uribe and Johnson trade, it can work out well, especially in Uribe's sake. If the Mets are relevant in September, Uribe could go on a tear. He's done it before. But if the Mets do well against Greinke today, and you know what? Going into tonight, Greinke and DeGrom have the two lowest ERAs in the National League. Greinke is right under 2, and DeGrom is right under 270. Greinke's 9-2. DeGrom, I think, is like 10-6 or something like that. I'm probably wrong. I have the stats in front of me. I'll look at it in a minute. But Greinke, hands down, one of the best pitchers in the National League, if not the best pitcher in the National League. And if this Mets team can hit him well today, I'll be certain that Collins shook up the team. Because Collins has tried this before. But we all know it's the Wilpons and Sandy Alderson running things. But it's finally about time that Terry Collins showed he had a voice. And last night it showed for it. Everybody was getting on base. Everybody was hitting. Matt Harvey went 2 for 4. Lucas Duda hit 2 home runs. Michael Conforto went 4 for 4. Neuenhuis, who was the afterthought of the first half of 2015, 4 for 4. And you know what? Juan Lagares hasn't been swinging the bat at all this year. So you know what? If Neuenhuis could show that he has some stuff, he could be playing a lot of center field this year. We're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. When we come back, we'll talk a lot more New York Mets and a lot more Yankees. We have a lot of MLB to talk about on the show today. July 26th, which means it is Hall of Fame induction day in Cooperstown. A lot of great guys going in. And Pedro Martinez made a comment about A-Rod, which I feel was right on the money about him not being in the Hall of Fame. We'll get to that later. 14 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. I know, that's weird. We're not on 1 to 4. 10 to 1 today. So, 14 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney on SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Back after this.
Hey, it's Jesse Leach from Kill Switch Engage, and you're listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair.
18 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. Still a lot to talk about today. We're still on the topic of New York Mets and the surprising beatdown they put on the first-place Dodgers last night. Now, a lot of people can make the argument saying it happens, and you know what? It does happen, but you know what? It also happens on the other side as well. You know the Mets broadcast team, who I love to death, I think is probably one of, if not the best in baseball. And I'm not being biased. It's just, Darling, Cohen, and Keith Hernandez go great together. But Keith Hernandez was saying last night, the Dodgers have issues, this and that. It's like, why can't people just accept the fact that the Mets can actually win a game? I know 15-2 was a shocker. It shocked me too. It shocked the hell out of me. I couldn't believe it. I'm getting alerts on my phone that Lucas Duda homered and Conforto goes 4 for 4, and I'm like, who is this team? I'm like, where has this been since April? I'm like, Duda went 2 for 6 with 2 home runs? You got to be kidding me. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it, especially Lucas Duda. I'm like, okay, well, the whole offense blew up. Duda will probably go 0 for 6. Duda goes 2 for 6 with 2 home runs. That's an odd day at the ballpark. Excuse me. And, but why can't people just accept the fact that the Mets can win? They're only 50-48 people, 2 games over 500. Now, looking at the Juan Uribe-Kelly Johnson trade, I thought was a very good trade for what the Mets wanted to do. A lot of Mets fans, including myself, don't want the pitching to be touched in trades. Now, Sandy Alderson has went public and said he's not done. And I believe him. I believe Sandy Alderson wants to build a winner, and for him to do that, he has to give up. He's got to sacrifice. He has to sacrifice. And I believe that is the right way to do it. But you look at the pitching that the Mets have. DeGrom, Harvey, Syndergaard, Matz, Wheeler coming back next year. John Neese has pitched very well since May. Since June. He lost a lot of starts. But again, that's because of run support. John Neese has pitched very well. I personally believe since I say G was the first target, got sent down to AAA. You can make the argument, I believe it was Friday night. Neese didn't pitch too well. But, Neese was a little distracted. He had a newborn on the way. So. But you take a look at what's going on with John Neese. Besides Friday night, I thought he's been pitching beautiful. Now, do I think he's still trade bait? Yes, and I think he will be gone before August 1st. I'm surprised he's not gone already. I'm actually surprised that we didn't ship him to Atlanta, because when I saw, because I was actually down in Point Pleasant when it happened, that the Mets are trading for Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson, my first instinct was, who did they give away? And I was very relieved to find out it was only a couple of minor league prospects that nobody knows about. So, but my heart stopped because I was like, who did the Mets give away for these cheap guys? Now, the Mets don't have much money. So for them to get good value, they have to give good value. They don't have much money to go out and just sign guys. So when I found out they traded for Uribe and Johnson, there are 2 cheap guys who can perform well. Uribe's going to take over at third for a while, probably in and out with Daniel Murphy while Wright is gone. And with the move being done, David Wright is now on the 60-day DL. So, yeah, he's starting baseball activity next week, but don't expect him back anytime soon. What, September 1st maybe? Now, if this team is a playoff contender, can you see David Wright coming in and being David Wright for the last, 15 games of the year and trying to put this team in the playoffs? Because if the Mets are a team that could go into the playoffs, they're not going to just ease in like in 2006. They're not going to ease in like 86 and 88 and 2000. They're not going to ease in that way. They're going to go in the last week. They're going to be one of the last teams in. Whether it's to fight for the NL East, which the Mets still can do. They're only 3 games out. Or in the wild card, which now looks like it's going to be a lot harder than they thought, with teams like Pittsburgh and San Francisco and Chicago and possibly, St. Louis. Because, St. Louis was only 2 games up. Before the All-Star break. Now they're 7. But Pittsburgh's still playing very, very good baseball. ever since they played the Mets back in, I believe it was June. They have just played outstanding baseball. The pitching has been great. The offense has been extremely consistent. And Pittsburgh is proving that, even if they do win the wild card, that they could be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. If they run through St. Louis, don't be surprised. But you take a look at this playoff picture, and personally for me, I'm looking at it right now. The Mets' best bet is to win the NL East, which is still possible. They're only 3 games out. Washington is not playing good baseball. They beat Pittsburgh last night. Ian Desmond homered. Taylor went 4 for 4. But Washington, you expected them to have almost 70 wins by now. You expected them to be the caliber of the St. Louis Cardinals right now. They're not doing that. They're only 52-44. This NL East is not done yet. Now, a lot of people are probably like, Sean, it was one game. 15-2, it happens. I understand that. But I feel the trade is going to help this team a lot. Provides great defense. And now that I kind of look at it, it's a perfect opportunity to bench Flores because, he can't field a ground ball when he's playing with 10-year-olds, let alone the major leagues. You put Tejada at shortstop. Murphy at second. Murphy and Johnson switch on and off at second. Johnson showed he's a great player off the bench. I don't know why Uribe didn't start last night. But the Mets still have a chance. The pitching is there. The offense has to show up every single night like last night. I'm not saying 15-2 every night, people. Because you know what? The Mets have a easily winnable series against San Diego coming up. And Washington all at home. But now just previewing today. Zach Greinke versus Jacob deGrom. 2 guys with the lowest ERAs in the National League. That's a game that you're going to want to catch. After LA, Mets have 3 with the Padres and the Nationals at home. 3 with the Marlins and the Rays on the road. Then 4 with the Rockies at home. Now, I understand the Mets have one of the worst records on the road in the major leagues. But the Marlins and the Rays on the road. Marlins more than the Rays. Well, the Rays, that AL East is very wide open. The Rays are kind of like in the same boat as the Mets right now. Well, we'll see. So, we'll take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, we'll continue our Mets discussion, and we'll get into Yankees right after that. Again, a lot of MLB, a lot of NFL, and it was actually a college football story that I heard on the way up here to Montclair State University today that I just had to share on the air. We're going to get to that later. Updates on JPP and CJ Wilson that you're going to want to hear about. So you might not want to go anywhere. 26 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios for SMC Sports. 973-655-4256 on 90.3 FM. Back after this. Do you make music? Are you in a band? Or maybe you're a solo artist? Do you want more exposure? Look no further. Montclair State University's Underground Radio, 90.3 WMSC, is always looking to put new music on the air. So artists, listen up. If you would like to send your music to WMSC, you can send a digital copy to music@WMSCradio.com. Keep in mind that music with offensive language or content will be subjected to FCC regulations and censored if needed. Questions? Call the request line at 973-655-4256. So what are you waiting for? Send in your music to 90.3 WMSC now. And 30 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. Still a lot of Mets to talk about, a lot of Yankees, a lot of MLB in general, a lot of teams who are doing surprisingly well this year, who I didn't expect to do well at all. I went on John Galetly's show, Speaking of Sports, on opening day, and we previewed the entire National League, and we got into a little bit of American League before I had to go to class. 2 teams in the American League that I expected to go nowhere, the Minnesota Twins and the Houston Astros. Those 2 teams are in huge contention for the playoffs right now. It's scary. Probably 2 of the best teams who aren't leading their divisions. Now, Kansas City looks like they're going to win the AL Central for the first time since, I believe, was it 1985? because they won the wild card last year. Detroit doesn't look like they're doing anything. They look like they're going to ship Price. Cabrera, I think he's still in the DL. I'm not exactly sure. But it looks like they're going to ship David Price. Justin Verlander isn't his old self. He's not his prime Justin Verlander anymore. That might have something to do with Kate Upton, but that's another story. But this Detroit team looks like they're going nowhere. They're not even 500 right now. This Kansas City Royals team has blown up. And you know what? I would love to see this Kansas City Royals team back in the World Series. I really would. But, so it looks like they're going to ship David Price. They're not going anywhere. But the Minnesota Twins and Houston Astros, they're just, and you know what? The Houston Astros more because they just got Scott Kazmir. Minnesota's one trade away from being an extreme playoff contender. But we'll get to that later. Going back on the Mets, though, I want to kind of just preview what they have coming up. Like we said before the break, 3 with the Padres and the Nationals at home. Mets always do very well at home, except for, the first 2 games after the break. 3 with the Marlins and the Rays on the road. The only reason that worries me is because the Mets have the worst road record, or one of now, in the major leagues. But 6 games in Florida is very easy to win. I understand the Mets never play well at Marlins Park. But the Marlins don't play well at all this year. The Marlins, what are they? They're 41-56. They're 11.5 back in the NL East. And they had higher expectations than the Mets going in. I said if there was a wild card game to be played, it was Pittsburgh-Miami with the Mets sitting on the outside looking in. I gave Miami more expectations than the Mets this year. And does it look like they're 15 under 500? I mean, I'm not complaining. But the Mets could do well against the Nationals. The pitching lost their last series. That was all Bobby Parnell. And after a tough series with the Pirates after the Rockies at home, which is a very easy series to win. The Rockies are one of the worst teams in baseball. But after a tough series with Pittsburgh, Mets have the Orioles, Rockies, Phillies, Red Sox, and Phillies. So after the Pirates, Mets have the Orioles, they've got the Rockies again, and they've got the Phillies in 6 of their next 9. And then the Red Sox. The Mets should dominate August. If there was a bright part of the Mets season, it is the month of August. Those teams that I just mentioned, yeah, the Mets could have tough battles with the Rays and the Orioles. But Rockies, Phillies, Red Sox, Marlins, Padres, well, more Marlins. Marlins, Phillies, Red Sox, Rockies should be a series that the Mets take advantage of. The Mets still have a great chance to make the playoffs. If the pitching stays dominant, which it will, I know it will, because it has the entire season, but the offense has to stay awake. And in September, the Mets play the entire NL East again, besides the Yankees and the Reds, but the Reds are doing just as poorly as the rest of the NL East. So besides the Yankees, the Mets play the NL East the entire month of September. The Mets have a great chance to win this division, now that I look at it. Now, if the Mets collapse, obviously, and they don't do well in August and September, then that's it. Washington's going to win. But just looking right now on paper, the NL East is not wrapped up yet, and neither is the wild card spot. Mets still got a shot. And I know a lot of people are listening and are about to call in saying I'm crazy, but think about it. Rockies, Phillies, Red Sox, Marlins in the month of August. Those are big series for the Mets. Big. Sean Martin tweets, "It's a miracle I'm up and it's still the first hour of the show." So we'll probably expect to hear from him later. And he'll probably call in saying I'm crazy as well. But Mets still have a great chance to win the East. And again, besides the Reds and the Yankees, the Mets play the NL East in September. And, the only high point of the season is the Mets have done very well against the NL East this year. That was the reason the Mets went on their tear in April, because all they played was the NL East. Besides the Yankees at the end of the month, it was Washington, Atlanta, Miami, Philly, repeat. But Terry needs to stay on them and show that he has a voice. Bottom line, Mets are not done yet by a long shot. But now we'll switch tracks a little bit to the Yankees. The Yankees surprisingly are doing very well this year. Very well. 54-42. They came back 5-0 last night. But again, the problem, CC Sabathia in the starting rotation. He went 5 2/3 last night, gave up 5 runs, 5.38 ERA. Unbelievable. CC Sabathia, a guy who's 4-8 this year in 19 games. That means 7 no decisions. He's given up 67 runs and 21 home runs. When are the Yankees finally going to grow a set and put this guy in the bullpen? You've already respected him long enough to keep him in the starting rotation. It's time for a change. Yankees are interested in Cole Hamels, David Price. It's time to do something. Put another lefty in the rotation. Let's see what CC can do in the bullpen. I don't think it's a slam on CC to go in the bullpen. Proof positive. Not a lot of people remember this. Mariano Rivera came up as a starting pitcher. And then he turned into the best closer that the MLB has ever seen. I don't think it is a slam on CC Sabathia to go in the bullpen. A lot of the greats have went into the bullpen at the end of their careers. CC has had one of the best careers I've ever seen. He was great on the Indians, great when he had his run with the Brewers, and he has been a phenomenal New York Yankee. But ever since he went down, I believe with knee surgery, or was it shoulder surgery? It could have been both. He has not been the old CC Sabathia, and that's going to happen. But I think it's time for a change, and I've been saying this for a few weeks. You know what? And it took A-Rod 3 home runs to beat Minnesota last night. It took A-Rod hitting 3 home runs to clean up CC's mess. Joe Girardi has to realize now, and I'm sure they discussed it, that it is time. It's time for a change. I personally think it is. And if the Yankees do go after a guy like Cole Hamels or David Price, and there are a lot of other lefties who are open for trades, I believe that will be the turning point to put CC Sabathia in the bullpen. Who knows? CC could be lights out in the bullpen. You give him 1-2 innings a night, he could be a great setup man. I'm not saying CC has lost anything, but, you know, this guy can't go 5 innings anymore. This guy can't go 6 or 7 or 8 innings anymore. The pressure of him being a starting pitcher, it's not there. Or it is there. CC is not the old CC Sabathia of old. He's not the consistent 19-game winner of 2009 and 2010 and 2011. He's not that guy anymore. He's not the guy to help the Yankees go to the playoffs, because he's been doing anything but that this year with a 4-8 record, a 5.38 ERA, one of the highest in the big leagues. What's been helping the Yankees stay in first place is the AL East has been, I would say, pretty competitive. Right now, it's still wide open, but it's been the Yankees' offense that has been doing it. The race is not over, but the Yankees are starting to run away with the division. But Toronto, Tampa, and Baltimore are still in the hunt. I'll read the standings for you. New York, 54-42. Toronto, 50-49, 5.5 back. Tampa, 49-50, 6.5 back. Baltimore, 47-49, 7 back. And Boston, 43-55, 12 back. And Boston's been one of the biggest disappointments in baseball this year. I picked them to be in the World Series. With the signings that they had with Hanley Ramirez and Pablo Sandoval and the pitching that they had, I thought they were going to the World Series. And they have been absolutely one of the biggest disappointments in baseball. But recapping the Yankees last night, they came back 5-0 from Minnesota to beat them 8-5. Warren gets the win out of the bullpen. Perkins with the loss. Miller with the save. A-Rod 3 for 4. 3 home runs, 4 RBIs. Teixeira 2 for 4. Chris Young 1 for 2. Yankees have won 7 of their last 10 since the break, which has been very great for them. Or it will be 6 of their last 9 since the break. My apologies. 30-17 at home. 24-25 on the road. So they're playing decent on the road. But they need to do better if they want to be a great playoff team. Now, I believe the Yankees are going to run away and win the AL East, which is something that I couldn't say opening day, and in February, and in January, and in March. The Yankees doing well, 12 games over 500, has to be the biggest shock in baseball, besides the Houston Astros doing well. You know, the Mets had some high expectations at the beginning of the year, 83, 84 wins. The Yankees, you know, a lot of people said they weren't even looking at 500. And the Yankees now are starting to run away with the AL East. I give them everything that they've had this year. They've had a phenomenal year. And it pains me to say this, but their biggest contributor, in my opinion, that has got them to this point is Alex Rodriguez. A-Rod has had a year like no other. After last year having it off, he trained the right way, in my opinion. What has he got, like 16 home runs this year? Something along those lines. It's unbelievable. You know, he gets busted for PEDs again. He sues his own union. He calls everybody liars, goes on Francesa and lies for 50 minutes on that interview. You know, goes off on Bud Steely for not showing up to court. And then it comes out that he did lie. And, you know, they open up Yankee Stadium for a press conference. Instead, he writes a letter. You think A-Rod's going to be the biggest bust in baseball. I said it on Craig's Call from January to April that A-Rod was going to be the biggest bust coming back from a PED suspension, and I couldn't have been more dead wrong. Yeah, I tip my cap to Alex Rodriguez. I still hate you. I still don't like you. I still don't respect you for what you did and what you did to your own union and what you did to your own team. But I will give you credit. You are having a season that nobody saw coming. And for that, that is one of the biggest reasons that the Yankees are now in contention to win the AL East. Teixeira, obviously, another one. You know, Teixeira hasn't been Teixeira in the last few years. He is showing why the Yankees gave him a giant contract. Chris Young couldn't do anything on the Mets, comes to the Yankees, and he's just blowing everything out of the water there. But, again, the Yankees, I think, are one trade away from locking up the AL East. And two guys always come to mind. Cole Hamels, David Price. David Price, though, if the Tigers don't ship him, he'll be a free agent in 2016. The Yankees are a few years away, I think, from winning another World Series. You think about it this way. Matt Harvey's contract, I think, is running up soon. I could totally see Harvey being a Yankee. Price, I could see being a Yankee. Bryce Harper, I could see being a Yankee in 2019. 50-50 shot with Mike Trout. If you get Harper and Mike Trout on the Yankees, it's over. It is over. You know, George Steinbrenner would have been the kind of guy to buy out all these guys. You know, and the Steinbrenner kids aren't really like that. And you know what? It's a new system, and you can see right now it's working. It's worked before. And yeah, the Yankees had a slow 2013, 2014. They didn't make the playoffs, which would have been nice for Rivera and Jeter to do. But this year, the Yankees have to be one of, if not the biggest surprise in baseball. You know, Brett Gardner leading the team, 298 batting average, 101 hits. Teixeira, 24 home runs, 65 RBIs, 557 slugging. It's unbelievable. When we come back, we're going to go more in depth on the Yankees and a lot more MLB to get to on the show. And a lot of NFL again, a lot of college football. And have you heard the name Gavin Glass? You will later. 44 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports. 973-655-4256. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios on 90.3 FM. Back after this. All right, 48 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. 973-655-4256 is the number to call to join the conversation. We discussed a lot of Mets before. Now we're on Yankees, which the Yankees are big surprise in baseball this year. We'll discuss a lot of NFL later, a little bit of Gold Cup later as well. Special request from our assistant news director. Juan, shout out to you. So we'll discuss a little Gold Cup later, especially the U.S. meltdown at the end of the tournament and their loss against Jamaica, and then their shootout loss last night. So a lot of things to talk about. We'll talk Jackals as well. Jackals have a doubleheader in Sussex County today. We were planning on having a player interview today on the show, but due to the doubleheader, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But there are plans for a feature to be made the weekend of August 8th. So there are plans to do something like that for the Jackals and WMSC. So there are plans for the sports team to do something. So for any sports team members listening who are interested, send me an email, and we'll get that started when I get back from vacation on the 1st. So we'll talk Jackals, we'll talk NFL, we'll talk college football, because there's a lot going on in college football right now, including a 22-year-old named Gavin Glass. But again, we'll get to his story later. But we'll finish up on Yankees. We got a lot more MLB to discuss. So with the Yankees case, I believe this team is one trade away from the playoffs. Again, the Yankees have a 5.5 game lead in the AL East. The race is not over, but the Yanks are starting to run away with it. You know, with guys like Gardner and Teixeira and A-Rod and all these guys who, you know, are just helping the team. You know, there's no other way really to put it. So there's really no other way to put it in the fact that the Yankees have surprised a lot of people this year. Nobody, including myself, expected this team to be 12 games over 500 at any point in the season, let alone right now, which is a very important time in baseball right now. We're going towards August right now. This is crunch time for everybody, especially for me as a Mets fan. You know, I can't remember a time that the Mets were in relevance for winning a division or going into a wild card spot at any point in the year. So, real quick, we have to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. When we come up, we'll finish our discussion with the Yankees. 973-655-4256. You're listening to SMC Sports, 90.3 FM. Back after this. All right, 56 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports, 90.3 FM. Again, I apologize for the quick breaks in the last, 15 minutes. You know, some people like to call in and hang up on the station, and we're not allowed to put calls through without screening them. But now on the phone, the WMSC Sports Media Coordinator, Sean Martin. Sean, you're in SMC Sports. What's going on?
Not much. Heard you giving some praise to my Yankees and had to take advantage of every chance I'm going to get when you're doing that, because obviously it's, not as fun when you start talking about the Mets, even though I can hop on and start talking about how bad they're playing, but I figured I'd talk about the Yankees and how good they've been playing.
Well, Sean, again, I know you're probably one of the guys who were saying last night, oh, it's one game, 15-2, it happens, but you have to admit, though, if this is the future for this Mets team, and I said before, looking at their schedule, the Mets have a very light August and September, the Mets aren't out of the conversation for the playoffs just yet.
Yeah, they're not, and I think it's really, you have to look at that, and then you have to think where this team was at the very beginning of the season and say to the fans that were expecting this to be a playoff year that you pretty much have made all those expectations already.
Agreed.
At this point, if you can still play, respectable baseball the rest of the way out. No one was saying that this was supposed to be a World Series team this year. By far, the ceiling for this team was going to be the playoffs, and, in New York, as soon as you mention the word playoffs, every fan makes it an expectation, and, of course, the Yankees have set the model that if you're in the playoffs, you have to win the whole thing, which isn't exactly fair to a team like the Mets who hasn't seen the playoffs in a million years. They've looked a lot better. They have the future pitching rotation in place, obviously. The offense is going to come around at some point, we hope, for Mets fans. So, I think they've shown a lot of positive signs. They've had stretches where you can, clearly said that you could have played better and would be in a better playoff spot at this very point. But I think overall it's been pretty much what you can expect from the Mets this season, and they're still fighting for a playoff spot, like you mentioned.
Yeah, Mets aren't done yet. They're only 50-48, and again, I said it before, after L.A., they've got San Diego, Washington at home, Marlins, Rays on the road, which is winnable, but, the Mets on the road is always risky, Rockies, and then in the month of August, you've got the Rockies twice, Phillies twice, You got a tough series with Pittsburgh, but besides that, a very light August. And then in September, besides the Yankees and Reds are playing awful too, you have the entire NL East, which the one bright point in the season is the Mets have thrived against the NL East this year. You know, if there was a time for the Mets to capitalize and try to win this NL East, it's August and September. But now looking at your Yankees, Sean, you know, from January to March, I was saying this team can't even be 500, and now they're 12 games over 500. You know, just give me your insight on what it's like to finally see this team looking like they're going back to the playoffs.
I think the biggest thing with this team this year, and the thing that I've enjoyed the most and have been the most excited about all season, has been, you know, how many different ways this club finds ways to win games. You know, different players picking each other up and finding ways to not lose multiple games in a row and put together win streaks and ultimately stay atop this division. You know, that's something that we never saw from Yankee teams in the past. It was always the same guys, and when they were cold, the pressure was on them to just turn it around, and if not, the losing was going to continue. But now, you know, this year you look at, it seems they have the right mix of the young guys and the older guys, and you take these last two nights, for example, you get blown out opening a series in Minnesota after sweeping Baltimore with Pineda on the mound. So you're saying this is, you know, not nearly the best start to a series that we want to have if we're trying to continue to hold this divisional lead. You send CC Sabathia out there last night, another bad start from him, and then you battle back into the game. A-Rod hits 3 home runs, and, you know, the youngster John Ryan Murphy hits the game-winning home run, a 3-run shot into right center in the top of the ninth. So, you know, that's not something that we've seen from Yankees teams in the past, but now I think they have the right balance of the veteran guys, the young guys in the clubhouse that are important, that, you know, we're not being as willing to trade away at this point. And, you know, I said going into the season that I expected this to be a good ball club, even though not a lot of people did, and sure enough, they are for many of the reasons that we talked about.
Exactly, as we hit the top of the 11 o'clock hour on 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. You're listening to SMC Sports. Sean McChesney, Sean Martin on the phone, talking to little Yankees. And, Sean, I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually listening to Michael K's show the other day, and they were talking about Carlos Beltran's, like, charity dinner a few weeks ago. And Carlos Beltran always does a great job with his charities. He does great things for kids in Puerto Rico, where he grew up, or Dominican Republic, wherever it was. But he mentioned out of the 25-man roster, 20 guys were there. That just shows how united this Yankees team is. A-Rod was there, Sabathia was there. Everybody was there to support this cause for him, and I believe that's because of the bond that these guys have built. And personally, that's the reason that I believe this team has been so great all year. But looking at Sabathia now, Sean, how many more bad starts is it going to take for Joe Girardi to finally pull the plug and put Sabathia in the bullpen?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for that, and hopefully the answer is, you know, one more such start, because, you know, I know I'll speak for a lot of Yankee fans when I say that it's something that needs to happen if this team's going to be a serious playoff contender going forward, which is what we should expect them to be. And, you know, give credit to CC and give credit to Girardi. They all say the right things when they're asked about it. Girardi says that, you know, CC has been great working with the other pitchers and selling them what it's like to be in a pennant race, because he's the only one that's been here for that experience in 2009 and some other years, which is great. You know, I just talked about how we have the right balance of the veterans and the young guys. Yes, you need that, but you don't need that guy in your starting rotation. He can still be that force from the bullpen and help this team win. And, you know, if he wants to help this team win, he should be willing to step down into that role. You can bring Adam Warren back into the rotation, or, you know, make a trade, call up Severino. They have tons of options to go to, but it seems like they're just stuck with wanting to keep the veteran CC in the rotation, and, you know, it's likely going to hurt them in the long run, whether or not we notice it or not, because, you know, even if he does have a couple good starts in the playoffs and helps this team out, his arm's going to start getting tired, and, you know, he's not someone that's going to be consistent night in and night out anymore, as opposed to some other guys who at least can, you know what you're getting with them, such as like Adam Warren and Severino.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Sabathia, and I understand it's a respect thing. They signed him for a huge contract, but he's not 09, 10, 11 CC Sabathia anymore. I believe the Yankees have shown him enough respect to hold out this long, but with the Yankees going into the trade deadline, they have interest in Hamels and Price, two very dangerous left-handed pitchers. I believe Hamels could do very well on a team that's playing good. So the Yankees, I feel, will be a great fit for him. I believe that's the trade that's going to finally put Sabathia in the bullpen. I will give Sabathia his credit. I believe he's still a great pitcher. And I said this before, Mariano Rivera started out as a starting pitcher. He's the greatest closer in MLB history. First ballot Hall of Famer, the second he's up for it. So I don't think CC's done yet with his, with his great efforts. I still think he could be a very aggressive and dominant pitcher, but I don't think he's a starting pitcher who could go 5 or 6 innings anymore.
Yeah, and I don't think that there should really be any shame in wanting to pitch for this Yankees bullpen. It's been, the storyline of the first half of the season going into the All-Star break is what people were talking about, was this Yankee bullpen, how overpowering they were, and with him in there, they should be even better. And so you can never not justify improving one of your team's strengths as opposed to trying to improve the weaknesses. You can never get worse from kind of making something that was already a strong point of your team even better. And I think that's what would happen to the bullpen with CC in there, and it would help us win even more games and, ultimately work out. But I don't know when we'll get to see it, like you said.
I think it's got to happen very soon because, again, I didn't know who pitched last night. I don't follow the Yankees as much as you do. I saw they came back, and then I saw the stats, and who was the starting pitcher? CC Sabathia gave up the 5 runs. It's a constant story every time CC pitches. Again, I know it's a respect thing, and I know any other pitcher, they would have pulled him out in May, but it's time. If the Yankees are going to be a serious contender, you think CC can't pitch well against these teams? He's facing teams like Minnesota and teams again like Houston, teams that the Yankees could run into in the postseason. If he can't pitch well against them now, what makes you think any different in October? It's time to pull the plug.
Absolutely, and I think he has a decent role for what we see from him as a starter. I think that projects well to what the Yankees can use in their bullpen. They have the stretched out guy in Adam Warren to be like an emergency guy who came in last night and then ended up getting the win when the Yankees came back. But they have Warren who really only comes in a blowout type situation and can occasionally get lucky with a game like last night. But they need a guy that's kind of in between that. You don't need him when the game's a blowout. You need the long guy in a close game. You have, let's say, Pinedo, Tanaka, your top guys on the hill, and they can get into the 6th or 7th. And, Betances is not available. Well, who's pitching, that final out of the 7th to get to the 8th and then get the ball in the middle in the 9th? And I feel like that could be a terrific role for CC. And even if you want to give Betances a full night off, I'd try him in the 8th inning a couple of times. So I think his role is a big one for the Yankee bullpen, and I think he would succeed in it and help us out a lot.
I said it earlier that CC would be a great setup man in the bullpen. I think maybe the biggest fear of the Yankees is him trotting out from right field to the pitcher's mound and him not having a heart attack on a halfway point. Maybe that's why they're not putting him in the bullpen. But, again, I feel he could be a dominant guy coming out of the bullpen. Rivera, starting pitcher in 95, greatest closer in MLB history. History has a weird way of writing itself, but I think it's time. But now, Sean, going into the trade deadline, there's a lot of moves that the Yankees can make. Again, Cole Hamels threw a no-hitter yesterday in his possible last start for Philadelphia. David Price said he could be on the move. I personally believe Yankees are one pitcher away from winning this AL East. What do you think?
Well, I think, obviously they're one pitcher away if he comes in and succeeds from running away with it. But I think if they keep what they have, they should expect to and should be division favorites the rest of the way out anyway.
Well, I mean like one pitcher from like a lock, like it's over.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but, it just depends who we're going to have to give up for that pitcher. You mentioned Cole Hamels obviously improving his stock with a no-hitter last night. And, the Phillies are starved for prospects right now. They'll take anybody's top prospects. And, if you're the Yankees, you used to be a team that other GMs would call and usually go get their top prospects. But Cashman is, committed to changing that culture, giving up these prospects. So I don't expect any of the top pitchers to land in New York. But there is that, secondary market of guys like, I might even put Price in that market because the Tigers are kind of all over the place right now. So a guy like Price, I think, would fit better than Hamels. And then outside of pitching at the trade deadline, I like to see some middle infielder at a shortstop, second base, just to kind of attempt to solidify those two positions a little bit more going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Sean, and last one before I let you go. The Yankees, 54-42, they got a 5.5 game lead. I'm convinced that the Yankees will end up winning this AL East, but it's not over yet. What do you think the Yankees got to do to lock it up?
Just keep playing, the same way that they have been. I know that's the, easy answer, but like I said, the way they've been playing with, multiple guys being able to step up and win games, they're by far the most complete, well-rounded team in this AL East. You
Absolutely.
Take a quick look at Baltimore. They win mostly with their offense. Camden Yards, small field, they hit the ball out of the ballpark a lot, and they win with their offense. And it's a lot of young guys in that offense, a lot of young, exciting players like Manny Machado, but they don't have the guys that are going to carry this offense late in the year, I don't think. And then you look at Toronto, they're making a big push to stay relevant this year and to finally have, a complete team. We know with Toronto that the offense has been there for the past years. Everyone knows the Blue Jays have been one of the best offenses in the MLB, and they lead the MLB in runs scored again this year. The Yankees are second, but miles behind. So they're trying to get in the market for a pitcher and make a run at this, but I still think that they don't have the experience and they don't have the, they're just a little bit too far back and a little bit too inconsistent to make that run. And then Tampa Bay, they were a good story while they lasted, but, don't have the offense. So I think if you're the Yankees, you look at all those holes in the teams that you're going to be playing and you say, well, let's just continue to find ways to win games with our pitching, timely hitting, power numbers, and go from there pretty much. Hope nobody gets injured.
Absolutely. And you know what? For the Yankees' expectations to be not even 500 at the beginning of spring training to now on July 26th to be 12 games over 500, have a 5.5 game lead, and you're pretty much now the favorite to win the AL East and potentially go far in the postseason. I'll tell you, Sean, we didn't expect that on Craig's call. I don't even think you did. Sean, I appreciate the call. I really appreciate it. Hope to hear from you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
All right, see you later. Sean Martin, the WMSC Sports media coordinator, talking Yankees with us. And, he's right. The Yankees, all they got to do is keep playing the ball the way they have, hope no one gets injured. Because when you take a look at this AL East, Tampa's not complete, Toronto and Baltimore aren't complete. Yankees have the complete picture in the AL East. They've got the offense, they've got the defense, some of it, and they have the pitching. CC is the one question mark, really. Now, if the Yankees can land the top pitching like Hamels or Price this year, that'll be the move that has to send CC to the bullpen. And then obviously somebody down to the minors to make room. But let's face it, people. CC Sabathia will always be one of the best Yankees of this era. 2009 he comes in, 19 wins, helps the team win the World Series. 2010, 2011 does the same thing, takes him to the postseason. But when he got hurt and then he came back, CC's not CC anymore. Now, again, and in the same example, Mariano Rivera started out in the majors as a starting pitcher. And he's the all-time saves leader and the greatest closer to ever play this game. He's the greatest closer to ever pitch. The point is, I believe CC still has something left in him. I don't think he has 6 innings or 7 innings left in him anymore. I think he's got 1 or 2 to be a setup man. Because if you take CC into the postseason, the Yankees aren't going to go far in those games. Because he couldn't beat a team like Minnesota last night, who they could run into in the postseason. He can't beat a Houston team that they could run into in the postseason. He can't beat Anaheim. He can't beat Kansas City. He stinks as a starting pitcher now. He's not CC Sabathia anymore. If you leave him in the starting rotation and this Yankees team makes the postseason, teams are going to light him up. And for CC's sake, it's time for a change. It's time to move to the bullpen. Because if you can't beat teams like Minnesota, Houston, Anaheim, Kansas City, you can't beat them in July, what makes you think you're going to beat them in October when the lights are on brightest and the world is watching? We're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, a lot more MLB to get to. I said we had a lot of MLB to get to in the show, and I mean it. NFL, college football, World Cup, etc., Jackals, etc. 973-655-4256. 13 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios, 973-655-4256 on 90.3 FM, and we'll be back after this. 15 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney in the studio, and just kind of previewing a little bit. Gold Cup final today in Philadelphia. Mexico, Jamaica. That brings us to our next guest. WMSC Assistant News Director Juan Contla. Hey, Juan, you're on SMC Sports. What's going on?
How's it going, Sean? Good to be on. First time.
Yeah, first time. Thank you, Juan. Now, I understand you're heading to the final today, Jamaica, Mexico. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Well, it's interesting how this final came about happening. I mean, obviously Jamaica got to the final because after beating the United States 2-1 in Atlanta. That was a game that no one expected that. Literally, everyone's calling it one of the biggest upsets in U.S. soccer history.
I would agree.
Yeah, definitely. They were totally manhandled by Jamaica, especially in the midfield. Kyle Beckerman did not have a good game in that one. He was pretty much phased out, hence why he was taken out into the third place game. He was replaced by Joe Corona, and last night that was another ugly performance by the U.S. I mean, going down 1-0 into the second half, and then having Clint Dempsey come on as a sub, score the tire, and then still not be able to get a result in extra time, and having to go to penalties and missing the last 3 penalties. It was hard to watch for the U.S. crumbling. I mean, losing the last 2 games on home soil. It's not good for them at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially now that the fact that winning this Gold Cup was a lot for them, because not only were they heavy favorites after the World Cup last year in Brazil, but they had to win this one because winning this Gold Cup qualified them automatically for the 2017 Confederations Cup in Russia. Qualifying automatically happened because they won in 2013 the Gold Cup. So repeating as champions would send them automatic. Now, because they lost, they have to wait for today's winner, either Mexico or Jamaica, to play on October 9th. The winner of that one in a one-match playoff goes to Russia.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how big the stakes were for the United States. And not being able to come through, it's really honestly the worst. The one who's going to receive the most criticism is definitely Jurgen Klinsmann, the U.S. head coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I feel like I hear that all the time, with the U.S. coach. Every time they lose, they want him fired, blah, blah. But, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I feel like the U.S. couldn't get out of the box against Jamaica. Same last night. They have thought they were very slow, both on offense and defense, and it showed. Jamaica easily one of their biggest upset wins, I think, in their history, let alone the U.S. history, in their own history, in their own right.
Yeah, definitely. Jamaica definitely wanted to win a lot more than the United States. You can see it. They had heart in their faces. You saw the guts they had to go. They weren't afraid. They weren't afraid that they were going to play a big team like the United States. And we're in the CONCACAF, so CONCACAF, it's United States, Mexico. Those are always the 2 big heavyweights in the division, in the area. So they weren't scared. They wanted to win this game, and now they made history. They're the first Caribbean team to ever make the CONCACAF Gold Cup final. First Caribbean team to ever do it. So even whatever the result is today within the final, Jamaica can walk away with their heads high because they're doing their nation proud right now.
Yeah, they had a phenomenal Gold Cup, and again, win or lose tonight, they had a phenomenal tournament. Biggest upset of the tournament, I say easily, was Jamaica over the U.S. U.S. came in heavily favored, defending champs, and they did very well up until, I would say, maybe, the Elite Eight, and then the Final Four, obviously, they lost. But, Juan, you're heading over to Philadelphia, you said, in about, I don't know, how much time? What, 10?
About 2 hours, I'm going to be driving.
2 hours?
Driving over to Philly, yeah.
Yeah, and...
Mexico's another one that, oh, my God, that was, I don't know if you followed the controversy, how Mexico even got to the final.
I actually didn't, so if you would explain, please.
Okay, so this is how Mexico gets to the final. Mexico gets to the final because they play in their quarterfinal match against Costa Rica, which was right here at MetLife Stadium. Mm-hmm. Really good game. I was lucky enough to be able to go to that one as well. In the 112th minute of extra time, Mexico get a very favorable penalty after a foul in the box against Uribe Peralta that no contact was made, but the ref still called the foul. Captain Andres Guardado from Mexico, he steps up, scores the penalty. Mexico advanced 1-0 over Costa Rica. Costa Rica eliminated after being another contender for this tournament after a very good World Cup last year in Brazil as well.
Right.
Mexico advanced, and then they play Panama, and Panama, that's the game I think where CONCACAF got a really ugly mark because 25 minutes into the first half, Luis Tejada, he's a striker for Panama. He gets a red card for a foul people are calling we're calling very soft. He elbowed a Mexican defender, and the ref gave him a straight red card, so he was expelled. Panama were down to 10 men. Easily, that's the Panama players were very upset about that because obviously after the first call against Costa Rica, everyone was suspecting that something was happening. Favorable calls towards Mexico, something was happening there. But The game went on until the 59th minute when Panama were able to score. Roman Torres got a header in for Panama. So they're up 10 men. Panama are down 1 man, still able to get the lead over Mexico. They had the lead until the 90th minute when a call for a handball against Panama was called, and that's where everything went haywire. Yeah, that's where everything went haywire. Players were protesting, mainly the Panama players. They were protesting, saying this was not a foul and that something was up. This was a hoax. Something was going on. This was something suspicious. The game was suspended for about 10 minutes until the penalty was finally taken by Mexico again, tying it up. It's 1-1 going into extra time. Semifinals. Winner goes to the Gold Cup. Winner would play Jamaica. Gold Cup in the final. And then we go into 5 minutes into the first half of extra time. Mexico will get another penalty call, but this one was legit. Mexico score it, 2-1. That's the final score. Mexico go to the final. But that shouldn't have been the score. Should the ref have gotten the first penalty call correct, which it wasn't. So Mexico got a lot of favorable calls in their road to the final. But yeah, that's how the final for both teams. That's the wrap to the final for both teams, essentially.
Yeah, that's actually weird way to get into the final, but
weird way to get into the final, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're heading over to Phil in a few hours. You'll be running the WMSC Sports Twitter, so if you want updates on the game, if you're not watching it, follow at WMSC Sports for updates. Now, Juan, before I let you go, just real quick, who's your pick to win the Gold Cup?
I mean, looking at injuries and all that stuff, Jamaica are a very fast and physical team. Mexico are a very precise and possession-based team. I see this game, I see it a 1-1 draw, probably Mexico winning on penalties.
Wow.
Yeah, I see this game going to penalties. I do not think Mexico, with all the injuries they have right now to key players like Javier Hernandez, Jonathan Dos Santos, Giovanni Dos Santos, Andres Guardado, the captains, also doubtful for the game. I see them playing a very heavy possession-based game, defending a lot. I see them probably scoring maybe 1 or 2 goals. Like I said, I see this going to penalties. I see them tying it after 120 and then probably going to PKs after that. But I think Mexico have the experience in penalties a little more than Jamaica to be able to take these and win it. I think Mexico are going to win their 7th Gold Cup, which is a record for them, actually. It's a record for the region, 7 Gold Cups if they managed to win this one. But I see them winning on penalties at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree. I'm not really an expert on it, but I know Jamaica, was not really a favorite to go into the finals, especially against the U.S.
No disrespect to them, but yeah, you really don't hear about them a lot.
Exactly. Now they're going in.
For them.
Yep. Now they're going in against a big Mexico team. I would have to go with the favorite with Mexico as well. Juan, I appreciate your call. I appreciate it, and have fun in Philly today.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Have a good day.
Anytime, Juan. You too. That was Juan Contla, the WMSC Assistant News Director. Big soccer fan. He's been wanting me to talk soccer on my show forever, and I'm surprised this is the first time he called in. Now, again, I'm not a big expert on the Gold Cup besides really what the U.S. has done. U.S. was shocked at the beginning of the week when they lost to Jamaica and Atlanta, and lost their bid to go to the final. But now you kind of take a look at the final right now, Mexico, Jamaica. Mexico going for their 7th championship for the Gold Cup. Personally, for me, there are a lot of injuries, and Jamaica's not a heavy favorite. I got to go with the favorite in Mexico to win this final. And it just the real story is the collapse of the United States. The defending champs, then they get upset by Jamaica, and then they lose to Panama on penalty kicks last night. It was just a very unfortunate ending to this team. So we're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. When we come back, we will discuss a little bit more MLB because now we have to fit in everything else into the show. I wasn't really expecting to talk Gold Cup today, but it was a great thing to get in. So we'll talk a little MLB, a lot of Jackals to get to as well, a lot of football to get into as well. So right now, we're going to play our exclusive interview we did with the media director and play-by-play announcer to Jackals, Michael Cohen. We did it last week, and we turned it into a little bit of a feature. So 25 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM, and we'll be back after this, but first, here's this. The New Jersey Jackals of the Canadian American League are off to a great start in their season and are looking to make another run towards the Canadian American League Championship Series. I had the opportunity to go one-on-one with the media director and play-by-play announcer of the Jackals, Michael Cohen, on my show, SMC Sports, to get a mid-season update on the team and what he expects from the Jackals in the second half of the year. Michael, you're on SMC Sports. What's going on?
Hey, Sean, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me on.
Anytime, Michael. Thank you very much for coming. Now, kind of just looking at basically the first half of the year, it's July 15th. We're really kind of getting to the second half of the season. Teams started out very slow. The defending runner-ups of the Can-Am Championship going 1-6 in their first 7. Right now, in contention at the midpoint of the year, what have you thought of the season so far?
Well, I think this is a team that is, one, very, very good offensively as far as what they can do as far as producing runs. They got a lot of power in the middle of the order. Kirby Jones, Terrell Kelch, Slade Huber, Castro. When all those guys are hitting on all cylinders, it is as scary a lineup that you'll ever see. But they can hit you to death. I think the one weakness that they have is that they don't steal enough. I think they have 2 guys in Justin Trapp and Jamal Austin. Austin leads the league in steals with 17, but I think he could get more, and I certainly think Trapp could have more than 6, especially leading off. So they don't steal a lot. But they can hit the baseball. They're very much more patient at the plate than the team from a year ago. But I think offensively weakness would be the steals, and I think also weakness for them is I don't think they really have the true ace. Their bullpen has been fantastic, but they don't have a true ace in the rotation to really go out there every 5th day and say, you know what, give me the ball, I'm going to go 9.
Yeah, absolutely. And now kind of looking at one of the Jackals' key players that I've seen come around lately, I feel is Leandro Castro, batting well around near 340, over 20 RBIs. Leading the team in pretty much almost every offensive category. What do you think is responsible for his strong play as of late?
I think just the fact that he's relaxed. I think, Joe Capelpagio had him hitting 3rd the first couple weeks of the year. He was hitting 4th. He was hitting like 115, 180, around 150, 130. Dropped him down to the 7th spot in the order, and he just took off. And it's been ever since that point, I would say in the middle of June when he dropped him down the order when we went up to Ottawa. He's been killing it. I mean, he's been absolutely killing the baseball.
Right.
Ever since that point, he's now 2nd in the league in home runs behind Marcus Nidifer of the Boulders. He's now the leader on the team in RBIs with 25 coming into today. So he really has done a fantastic job. I think just being able to be dropped down the order, and now he's kind of squared himself up in the 5th spot in the order, being able to relax, focus on his game and his game only, and that has really been the difference for him so far this year.
Yeah, and he's definitely come out to be one of their key players. But now, just overall on the season, just asking you, who do you think for the Jackals has been their biggest key player in the first half of the year?
I think their biggest key player, one, Castro. I think that's one that has to be the key player there. I think the other one will be Marcus Kelch because he's really been the most consistent player of the year, hitting runs well over 300 almost all season long. Mm-hmm. The guy's been hitting home runs. He drives guys in. He gets base hits. He's just consistent all the time. His defense has some issues over at 3rd. He's better first baseman than a 3rd baseman, but overall, I would say he's your overall MVP consistently from start to where we are now.
Yeah, and Michael, the last time we talked, you mentioned the injury to Isaac Pavlik. Just give us a quick update. What's the latest on Isaac Pavlik's groin? What's the latest on his health?
I talked to him just very briefly today, in fact, and he says, just kind of same old, same old. He's just going through it, just trying to rest the groin injury, and you would hope that soon, certainly towards the end of the month, that he gets back and starts doing some baseball activities, but right now he's just kind of shut down, and until he can resume baseball activities, it's just kind of TBA with him right now.
Yeah, and as we hit the midpoint of the season, New Jersey is a contender to be in the Can-Am Championship Series once again, but there are other contenders like Ottawa and Rockland. Who do you think are the top contenders to make their way to the final in September?
Well, I think the 4th seed is going to get very interesting. I think, first of all, you take a look at the top of the crop here. You got Rockland, you got Jackson at the top of the division. Quebec has kind of hung around. They haven't been great, but they're right there. They're only 2 games back. The 4th seed is now actually all 3 teams in the bottom of the division are now up for the 4th seed. 3 Rivers hasn't done nothing to show that they can be the difference there in the 4th seed. Ottawa, I think, is the best team of the 3. They haven't done anything special either. And Sussex has been playing their best baseball now, and now they're right there in the mix. So if you're the Jackals, you're thinking this. We want to try to get past the Boulders who want 1st place, and you want Sussex to get the 4th seed. Now, that's not a rip on Sussex, but because the Jackals are coming off of a long road trip at the end of the year, you don't want to have to think about going up to Canada after a long Midwest trip.
Right. And while we're on the topic, last question before I let you go. The Jackals do have that long road trip at the end of the year. They don't want to go up to Canada, but, just for the Jackals' sake, the way they've been playing lately, they are a contender to go to the final. What do they need to do to stay relevant and keep themselves in the hunt for the final in September?
I think what they need to do is they need to pitch better. I think starting pitching needs to be a little bit better for them. They can go out there and maybe find another starter. That would be good for them in the trade market. And I really think they need a lefty bat. I think they really need to have one. They have a bunch of guys that are right-handed power hitters. You get a lefty power bat, breaks it up. They really need to have that there as you move forward in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Michael, I really appreciate you calling in and giving us your insight. I appreciate it. Catch the Jackals all season long at Yogi Berra Stadium right here on the campus of Montclair State University. Also, don't forget to follow WMSC Sports on Twitter at WMSC Sports for updates and recaps on the Jackals all summer long. I'm Sean McChesney for WMSC Sports. On the field, on the court, on the ice, we got you covered. Let's go Jackals.
Have you ever wanted to be a part of something cool?
Do you want to be involved with campus life?
Have you ever wanted to make an impact in a big way?
Do you want to establish connections and build professional partnerships that can help land you a job?
Do you want to make friendships that will last forever? If you said yes to all of the above, WMSC wants you. Hey, I'm Saz Kazengwa.
And I'm Steve Malone. WMSC is a student-run, free-form radio station with an array of shows featuring various genres and awesome personalities.
You'll hear everything from alternative rock, R&B, metal, or country, just to name a few. As the voice of Montclair State for over 40 years strong, WMSC continues to grow as one of Montclair State's leading source for news, sports, and the best music.
Into sports? Become a field correspondent during MSU games.
You could be a reporter or an anchor covering campus news.
Like to be behind the scenes? Work with our equipment as a student engineer.
Or a web producer, managing social media. You could even train to have your very own on-air show. So be a part of WMSC FM today.
What's not to love about college radio?
It's a decision you'll never regret. To sign up, stop by our studios in Schmidt Hall, room 389 to fill out an interest form, or do so online on our website at WMSCradio.com. While you do that, check us out on 90.3 FM, and we're worldwide 24/7 at WMSCradio.com or with the Live 365 app on your smartphones and tablets.
We can't wait to see you soon.
Welcome to WMSC.
All right, 34 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports, 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. So we got a lot to talk about today. Still a lot of NFL to discuss. We will get back to MLB towards the end of the show, though, because I was driving up here this morning and listening to WFAN, and there was a story that broke, I believe, overnight. I don't know when it was broke, but it was the first time I had heard about it. About a college football player named Gavin Glass, or Class, however you want to say it. So, the story with this kid is actually unbelievable, and one that I thought I would share on the air, because, again, I didn't hear it until I was driving up here this morning. So, just kind of previewing what the story is, 2 years ago, this kid collapsed at practice and almost died of a fatal heat stroke. The temperature rose to 108 degrees on the field. And when he collapsed, it caused his heart and liver to fail. 14 surgeries at the University of Maryland Medical Center, which also included a liver transplant. So 2 years of fighting, frustration, rehab, all that fun stuff. Because it's fun. No, it's not. But finally gets back into shape to play football, only to find out it wasn't safe enough for him to play. Well, last week, he won his bid. I don't know what kind of lawsuit it was, but he won his lawsuit, and he won his bid to rejoin the Towson University Tigers this season. This story, I feel, could go both ways, because, the kid just had a liver transplant some point in the last 2 years. He gets hit the wrong way, he's done. But you know what? In my own opinion, I probably would have done the same thing as Gavin, because you know what? He's trying to get back to his normal life. He doesn't want to be remembered as the kid who almost died on a football field 2 years ago, and now he can never play again. He can't get back to his love of football. It's a very dangerous situation that he's putting himself in because you never know. Liver transplant, that's dangerous to go back on a field and play. But if it were me, I probably would go back on the field and play too because I would want to go back to my regular life. I wouldn't want to go back to the guy who was hurt, who, he couldn't play on a football team anymore because, God forbid, he collapsed and died during training camps in August because it was 100 degrees. I wouldn't want to be that kid. I would want to put all of it aside. That was the past. Here's the future, and I want to play. And that's what he's set out to do this year. Now, hopefully he does very well. Hopefully he's successful, and hopefully he doesn't hurt himself more because just goes to show what he can do. Causes heart and liver to fail. 108-degree weather caused that. 14 surgeries, 2 years of his life. And I was listening to the story on my way up here. A lot of medical personnel and professors and doctors were calling in. Very mixed reactions. Half were like he shouldn't play, it's dangerous, and the other half were like if he's cleared, he won his lawsuit, he's ready to go, let him play. It's a very mixed reaction towards this story. Now, in Gavin's case, though, again, I probably would have done the same thing if it were me. It's a very inspiring story. Now, they were calling him a hero. I wouldn't call him a hero yet. I would call him inspiring. I wouldn't call him a hero. Because a lot of guys do this. A lot of guys come back from career-threatening injuries and come back and play. I would call that inspiring. Not a hero, but inspiring. Because, again, a lot of guys come back from injuries, and you're like, oh, he's never going to play again, this and that. And proof positive, Jason Pierre-Paul, you don't think he's going to play with 9 fingers. He's going to miss some time, but he's going to play. We'll get to that story later, and on C.J. Wilson announcing his retirement, unfortunately. But, again, 2 stupid guys playing on the 4th of July, that's what's going to happen. But going back on Gavin Class, the way he's conducting himself is great. He won his lawsuit. He's now allowed to play football again, which I think is great. It probably is going to take his mind off of it, even though that's where he almost died. He almost died playing a game he loved. But looking at this story, it's almost mind-boggling that a guy with 14 surgeries in the past 2 years can fight back, get into shape, be in football shape, and be ready to go for September. It's mind-boggling, and he's 22 years old. He's got his, and that's the thing, though, why people are so hesitant. You got your whole life to live ahead of you. You're lucky to even be alive. A lot of doctors said he shouldn't survive. He shouldn't have survived. They don't know how he did it. Those were the doctors who were saying he shouldn't play. Like, you're lucky to be alive. You're lucky that you survived this. You're lucky you survived heart and liver failure for 2 years. You had 14 surgeries. You had a liver transplant. You're lucky to be alive. I get that. But if it were me, I would want to get back to my regular life. Like, I played baseball for 12 years. I played from when I was 5 to the time I was 17. If at any point in that stretch I needed a liver transplant, I would probably fight my hardest to go back and play. Now, they might not let me, but I would want to get back to my regular life and play if it were me. And I'm sure a lot of other athletes in college football and baseball and in any sport feel the same way. Now, baseball's not a contact sport. I know that. If this was a kid playing baseball, it would be a different situation, but this is football. It's a big contact sport, probably the biggest in America. So I can understand the concerns, but his parents and his family and friends are all behind him. They want him to play. They want him to do what he wants to do. And you know what? I'm behind the kid too. If it were me, I would want to get back to my regular life and play the game that I wanted to play. I wouldn't want a liver transplant and the fear of heat stroke keeping me from doing what I want to do. I wouldn't want that to happen. So I can understand from a person who's played a sport before why he's doing this, why he wants to go back and play so bad. I understand. Now, I never played college sports, but again, if it were me, it would be the same situation for me. I would want to go back and play. And they might not let me, and I might want to fight for my right to play. But again, it was his right to fight. He's 22 years old. And it's very nice to see that he won his bid. Hopefully he doesn't regret it. Because the last thing you want to see is him go out on the field and this to happen again. That's the last thing you want to see from a 22-year-old who's got his whole life ahead of him to live. And again, I didn't know that the story even happened until I was on my way up here this morning. WFAN spent a good, half hour to 45 minutes on it. It's really an inspiring story, if you ask me. It's a very great story to people who are fighting for their lives and then trying to get back to their normal lives. It's a great, inspiring story. I'm all behind Gavin. I hope he comes back. I hope he's as successful as he could be, because I'm sure he wants to forget the last 2 years of his life, and I would too. I'm really sure he wants to forget everything that happened and to go back to his normal life, go back to playing football, and to live the rest of his life not living in fear. And that's the main theme here. He's not living in the fear of him going out on the field, having another heat stroke, having another liver failure, heart failure, blah, blah, blah. He's not living in that fear, and that's great. That's what America is, people. You don't live in fear. And that's what he's doing. So, good for Gavin. Hope the recovery is completely full, and I hope you can go back to playing, football without, this happening again. I really hope, God forbid, this does not happen to him again. Because then everybody will really pull the plug. Be like, because again, he's lucky he survived. He wasn't supposed to survive the last 2 years. And he did, miraculously. Thank God. And now he wants to go back out and play football. Good for him. All for him. I love the inspiration. Again, I'm not calling this kid a hero, but I would call it an inspiring story to many people out there who are battling injuries, career-threatening injuries, life-threatening injuries, who want to get back to their normal lives, and I support the kid for it. We'll take a quick break here on SMC Sports. When we come back, we'll talk a lot NFL, a lot of MLB. At the end of the show, we have Jackals to cover as well. 43 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports, and we will be back after this. All right, 45 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Again, a special edition of SMC Sports. We're on this Sunday instead of Wednesday. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. So we talked a lot today. We talked a lot of MLB, and we're still not really done with MLB. We'll get to that at the end of the show. We talked a little bit of Gold Cup. I just broke the story about Gavin Class. A college football player who's looking to make a comeback after heart and liver failure almost killed him on the football field 2 years ago. So that's an interesting story. Talked a lot of Mets, Yankees, but now from Major League Baseball, we go to Minor League Baseball for the New Jersey Jackals. And the Jackals are surprising a lot of people this year. Brand new team, except for a few guys, and Isaac Pavlik being the main runner up there. This Jackals team had a very bad start to their 2015 campaign, and now they're 34-23. They are half a game back of the Rockland Boulders for first. And if the season were to end today, of course, it would be Rockland, New Jersey in the rematch in the championship series of the Canadian American League. But looking at the guys on offense, this is why the Jackals are doing so well. Leandro Castro batting .320, 36 RBIs, 9 home runs. A.J. Kirby Jones, 9 home runs, 35 RBIs. Mark Threlkeld, .317 average, 9 home runs, 35 RBIs. Don Bosco graduate Anthony Gomez, .309, 23 RBIs, Jackals' offense has been exploding lately. Now, yeah, they're struggling against teams like Rockland and Quebec, two teams that they've got to worry about going into the stretch in August. But this Jackals team, and Quebec, again, is a very interesting 3 seed right now. They're only a game and a half back of the Jackals for second place. Rockland has been leading the Canadian American League since the beginning of the year. They're the defending Can-Am champs. Very big favorite to repeat. So you have to take that into consideration as well. But then you look at the guys on the mound for the Jackals. Gabriel Perez, 7-1 this year, 2.68 ERA, 59 strikeouts. John Walters, 6-2, 2.87 ERA, 66 strikeouts. Julio Rodriguez, they picked him up in June. He's 4-0, ERA a little high at 3.34, and he's got 21 strikeouts on the year. But again, they picked him up a month ago. His first start was against Quebec, June 16th. Now, the Jackals have some of the best hitting and pitching in the league. Now, obviously not the best because, again, Rockland has huge threat in their lineup with Joe Maloney and Marcus Nadiffer. Maloney batting .359, 8 home runs, 45 RBIs. Nadiffer batting .253, so not too high, but he has 10 home runs and 48 RBIs leading the Can-Am League. Now, you take a look at these top three teams in Rockland, New Jersey, and Quebec. These are going to be the three most interesting teams when we go into the stretch in August. Because at any point in August, Rockland, New Jersey, and Quebec can clinch spots into the final. Because it's not like Major League Baseball. There's no playoff system, even though there's a good 8 or 9 teams in this league. 2 top teams go to the final. That's it. You know, you could be the 3 team. You could be the top 3, or you could be the 3 seed, be 10 games over 500, but you could still be out of the playoffs. That's how Major League Baseball used to be way back when. I believe till it was 1968. They were like that. And in 1969, they brought in the playoff system, which was also the year the Mets won the World Series. But again, looking at the Jackals coming up, and if they want to clinch a spot in the final, they've got to do it early because they've got a dangerous 11-game road trip to end the season. That will start in August and end at the beginning of September. It is crunch time for the Jackals right now. Again, they have some of the best pitching and hitting in the league, but again, Rockland has great threats in their offense. Quebec has made huge strides and are a very interesting 3 seed. They're 33-25. Carl Jalanis leading the league, 9-2, 1.90 ERA, lowest ERA in the league, 65 strikeouts. Mark Hardy, he's 5-3, 2.68 ERA, 60 strikeouts. And New Jersey, their biggest concern is they've struggled against Quebec and Rockland all year long. All year. Quebec more. And Quebec's pitching could find themselves in the final. You know, their pitching is one of the best in the league. Again, if the season ends today, it's Rockland, New Jersey. But Quebec is not far behind in 3 seed. They're only a game and a half back of the Jackals. So, you take a look at the top 3 teams in the Canadian American League right now. There is no guarantee on who's going to be in the final. You know, Rockland only has a half-game lead on the Jackals right now. There is no guarantee how the season is going to end and who's going to be on top and who's going to be in second and who's going to fall short. There is no guarantee just yet on who's going to be where. And that's what makes interesting baseball. And if you heard it before, Michael Cohen said it best. You know, the Jackals I feel they need to add a little more pitching if they want to kind of lock up a spot. You know, their offense has to stay consistent. Leandro Castro has to keep hitting the ball well. A.J. Kirby-Jones, who has been hitting very well recently, has to continue. Threlkeld has to be the Joe Dunnigan replacement and be the powerhouse that he has been all season. Anthony Gomez has to be a consistent hitter. You know, the whole team needs to contribute here if the Jackals want to make a run at the final. Because at the beginning of the year, the Jackals had a very new lineup, or a very new roster than last year. Joe Dunnigan, the big powerhouse, was the biggest one missing. But you take a look, and of course Isaac Pavlik, who has been with the team for now 11 years, who's currently on the disabled list with a groin injury, I think. I think he gets off soon, though. So, hopefully when he gets back, but Gabriel Perez has picked up the ball since he's been gone. Again, 7-1, 2.68 ERA, 59 strikeouts, impressive. 7-1. Of course, he's got a lot of no decisions, but 7-1, that's a good record. This team has to be consistent offense and defensively for this team to make a run at the Canadian American League Final. WMSC Sports will have a field day if the Jackals make the final with interviews, hopefully. You know, I'm really hoping to get that started along with Sam. But right now we'll take a look. Right now we'll just keep our eyes open on the standings, and I told our sports team, keep an eye on the standings the entire month of August, because you don't know. You don't know who's going to make a run. You don't know who's going to get hot at the right time. You don't know who's going to get cold at the right time. Because I know last year the Jackals clinched a spot very early in August, maybe like August 19th or something like that. It was early that they clinched a spot in the final. And again, they had that final one. They were 3 outs away from going 3-0 in Rockland, and then Rockland just exploded on the next 4 games and beat New Jersey in 6 games. For the Jackals to go into the final next month in September, because we're kind of around to August right now, their offense has to stay consistent, the pitching has to be great, and they have to beat teams like Quebec and Rockland. They have to win those next series, because I think they play them a few more times before the championship series, including on the road. And they also have to take advantage of teams that they know they can beat, like Sussex County. They got a doubleheader with them today. Teams like that. I really can't think off the top of my head today. I apologize, but Jackals got to stay consistent on all sides of the field. They have to hit behind the runners. They got to play small ball. They got to, bunt over. They got to drive guys in. They have to be consistent with their game plans. And they have been all year. For a team that had a 1-6 start, for that team, and then to win their next 10 in a row, and then be a 34-23 team on July 26th, that is not bad for the New Jersey Jackals organization right now. And it's definitely somewhere where they need it to be. It's definitely a good situation. It's a good, feel for them. But again, it's not over yet. Again, the division, Rockland leading with a half game. New Jersey in second place. But then Quebec is only a game and a half back of New Jersey and 2 back of Rockland. If you think the Can-Am Championship Series is locked, you are mistaken. We still got a long way to go. We're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, we'll talk a little bit of NFL. A lot of news to break there. Russell Wilson's contract negotiations, JPP, and CJ Wilson, Tom Brady, etc., etc., etc. 55 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour. You are listening to SMC Sports, 973-655-4256. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios on 90.3 FM, and we'll be back after this.
90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair.
Top of the 12 o'clock hour right here on 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. You're listening to SMC Sports. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. We're taking you to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, a lot of things still to get to in this last hour. I was just going to get to NFL, and breaking news. MLB trade deadline strikes again. Out of any team that I expected Johnny Cueto to go to, Kansas City wins the battle. Johnny Cueto just traded to the Kansas City Royals, and if it couldn't get any better for Kansas City, to have this guy on your pitching staff, the Royals, I believe, just locked up the AL Central. That has to be, besides Scott Kazmir going to Houston, that has to be the trade of the deadline. Great move by Kansas City. Great trade. And we are going to get to MLB probably around 12:30, 12:45 to close the show. Hall of Fame weekend as well. Johnny Cueto, 2.62 ERA, acquired from Reds, according to Fox. Second in NL in Cy Young voting in 2014. So, we'll get to a little MLB later on in the show, but right now we got to get to a little bit of NFL. And we'll start with the contract negotiations for Dez Bryant and Demaryius Thomas. Both of them signed similar deals. Dez Bryant, of course, I'll get into. 5 years, $70 million to stay with the Cowboys. No holdout. He'll report to training camp and play as scheduled. Both sides met halfway and agreed on $14 million a year, $32 million guaranteed, with a $20 million signing bonus. And he would have missed out on almost $800,000 a game if he held out. So Dez was deserving of the money with his monster season he had last year. 37 catches, 621 yards, 8 touchdowns. A lot of those games the Cowboys won in a 12-4 season, they wouldn't have won without Dez Bryant. Especially the game in Philadelphia in a must-win. I believe it was week 15. Yes, week 15 in Philadelphia. Dallas would not have won without Dez Bryant. 3 touchdowns in Philly. Crushing. Absolutely crushed the Eagles. And then the next week you went on to beat Indianapolis to win the NFC East. Without Dez Bryant, I think Dallas could have won the NFC East. But you know what? And you can make the argument, Dez did nothing in the playoffs. He didn't catch the ball in Green Bay. Big deal. That whole regular season was Dez Bryant. Now, on other news, JPP and CJ Wilson. JPP doesn't really have a timetable yet on when he's set to return. He does say he will. And I do believe him. He is a defensive end, so there is a possibility he could come back. CJ Wilson, however, the cornerback for Tampa, retired. He retired. And that's the ridiculousness of what these two did. You know, you're blowing off fingers on the 4th of July in a fireworks accident, and look at what it did to C.J. Wilson. It cost him his career. But although the quote-unquote's for now, I don't know what that means. Until what? You get a robotic finger or two so you can break that off while you're trying to catch interceptions? No. You're done. Don't say quote-unquote for now because you're done. You just retired from the NFL. Don't give me the quote-unquote for now. You're done. And JPP, I don't care. He'll never be the same. Because, again, now not only do both these guys have to try to play football with minus 10 fingers, you got to adjust to life without 10 fingers. With 9 fingers or 8 fingers. That's what you have to adjust to life to. That's the situation that these two put themselves in. Very unfortunate situation for C.J. Wilson. I don't feel for him at all, though, because it was very stupid on his part to do. I don't feel for him. Yeah, I feel that his career's over. I feel bad in that aspect. But come on, dude. You knew the risk playing with fireworks. You're a quarterback in the National Football League. You're making tons of money, and then you do this crap. It's unbelievable. Then another story: the Tom Brady appeal got delayed. Brady has threatened to sue the league if the suspension does not go his way. Now, the way it's going right now is the suspension is going to go to 2 games. Which, if the NFL does that, it'll show that their punishments and their disciplinary actions, not all of them, but most of them, are completely useless and irrelevant. Proof positive, Greg Hardy gets 10 games, it's now down to 4. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying the punishment was useless. Tom Brady, 4 games goes to 2. Except, the difference was Greg Hardy was cleared of all of his charges. And Tom Brady cheated in probably the most important game in the AFC last year. That's the difference. The NFL just looks worse and worse and worse when stuff like this happens. Brady feels he's innocent, and most likely it's going to get reduced down to 2. But here's the situation. If Brady sues the NFL, and they go to court with this, if Brady is really lying, he's screwed, because now he's got to testify under oath. So, for Brady's sake, take the 2 games or take the 4 games, just take it. Because if you are lying, and then you go to trial with this, it's over if you are lying. It's over. Don't give me all the... And another thing, it's why didn't you turn your phone over in the first place? They're going to ask you that firsthand. Why didn't you turn your phone over when you were questioned? And why is Belichick not in trouble either? That really pisses me off too, how he's not in trouble. The NFL has proven time and time again, and this will be another one, where punishments and disciplinary actions mean absolutely nothing. Not all of them, because AP served his time, Ray Rice served his time last year, but most cases, suspensions are useless in the National Football League. You give Tony Romo 12 games, he'll appeal it, he'll get 4. Greg Hardy gets 10 games, he gets 4. Tom Brady, 4 games, he's going to get 2. Stick to your punishments. For God's sakes, if I was playing in the NFL and it was like I was smoking weed in the or smoking marijuana in the locker room, and then it's all of a sudden I get suspended 5 games, I appeal that, I get 3. You know, punishments mean nothing in the NFL. They're never kept to their full potential. If you're going to suspend somebody 4 games, keep it at 4 games. You're going to suspend somebody for 10 games, keep it at 10 games. Unless you've got a reason to bring the suspension down, which you don't with Tom Brady, except for the fact that Roger Goodell and Robert Kraft are best friends, and you want to see New England back in the playoffs. Keep the suspensions where they are. Again, the only reason I'm defending Greg Hardy's suspension reduced was because he was cleared of all of his charges. That's the only reason I'm defending Greg Hardy. If Greg Hardy was in trouble, I'd say keep it at 10. Screw it. That's all I'm saying. But Tom Brady's guilty. Everybody knows he's guilty except all the New England Patriots fans who are too delusional to realize what's going on. Oh, well, you know, it's 28 degrees outside. 11 of the 12 balls could be underinflated at the, at the same level of PSI. No, it can't. 2 or 3, 4 tops. Not 11. How does this guy get 4 games? You are the quarterback of the team. You are being accused of telling the ball boy to dock the footballs. And you know what? We talk Tom Brady too much in this show. I'm just waiting to hear the ruling already. I'm waiting to hear this ruling. And again, I said it last week. I'll say it this week. If Indianapolis had any shot in winning that game, the punishment will be 10 times worse. New England wouldn't have been in the Super Bowl last year. Indy would have won the AFC Championship by forfeit. And Seattle would have put a whipping on Indianapolis in the Super Bowl. That's what would have happened. But now, because Roger Goodell and Robert Kraft are best friends, 4 games was already pushing it for the NFL. It was already making him look already bad enough. And now you're going to put it at 2 games, maybe get rid of it altogether. The NFL is really starting to become pathetic. Have the guts to do the right thing. Keep the suspension at 4 games. Now, a lot of people are saying 4 games is fair, and it can be, but I think 8 games was fair. I think the original idea of the suspension of 8 games was fair enough. I think that's fair. Because, again, I've said this many times, any other quarterback in the National Football League, Colin Kaepernick, Tony Romo, Eli Manning, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andrew Luck, if he had done that in the AFC Championship game, he would have been gone 8 games. 8. NFL, have the guts to do the right thing. Have the guts to do something. It's pathetic if you ask me. But we'll find out the ruling soon. Hopefully Roger Goodell does the right thing. I doubt he will, because we've been down this road before. So it looks like Tom Brady's going to get 2 games. My personal opinion, he should have got 8. But what are you going to do? It's almost not even worth yelling about anymore or fighting about anymore, because you know the right thing is to keep it at 4 games, but you know what's going to happen. You know that in the next few days, Roger Goodell is going to come out and say, we have reduced Tom Brady's suspension to 2 games. Or we have taken away Tom Brady's suspension. If they take away Tom Brady's suspension, I'm going to open up the show on August 5th with about an hour rant on why the NFL is completely ridiculous. That's what I'm going to do August 5th, if they take away the suspension. Now, if Tom Brady does choose to go to court with this again, if he's lying and he chooses to speak under oath, now, Tom Brady's a smart man. I doubt if he goes to court, he's going to be lying about anything. You'll know if Tom Brady's bluffing and lying or not if he keeps the 2 games of the 4 games. But Tom Brady has gone out. He's threatened to sue the league if the suspension is not gone. So we'll keep our eyes out and open for that while I'm on vacation. Hopefully we'll get a good ruling, because anything other than keeping the suspension where it is pitiful and ridiculous. And that's my own personal opinion on it. The NFL has to wake up, and the NFL has to start doing what is right. But, again, we'll see if they do that. We're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, we will discuss the situation with Russell Wilson and then get back into MLB to close the show. 12 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney in the WMSC Studios on 90.3 FM. Back after this. WMSC 90.3 WMSC, Montclair's Underground Radio. All right, 20 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. Sean McChesney in the WMSC Studios, talking lots of baseball today, lots of football, college football news as well, New Jersey Jackals. A lot to discuss, and we still have a little bit more NFL to close out this last half hour, and then we'll finish up with MLB, trade deadline news, Hall of Fame weekend, etc. Teams to watch, teams to be disappointed in. A lot more MLB to get to, and we'll get to that in about 10 minutes. So we'll finish up NFL. And I found this story last night about Seattle Seahawks offering Russell Wilson a contract. It will pay him $21 million a year. Now, Russell Wilson went out and said he wants $26 million. He wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I understand that everybody wants to be the highest paid at anything. You want to be the highest paid at your job. You want to be the highest paid intern. If you have a paid internship, you want to be the highest paid this, the highest paid that. We get that. You want, $60. You want $160 instead of $140 when you go out and landscape. I get it. You want more money, and everybody wants more money. But Russell Wilson has put up great numbers, but he's not ready to be the NFL's highest paid player. He's been in the league, 4 years? It took Aaron Rodgers a while for him to earn that status. Since Super Bowl 43, Russell Wilson is the only quarterback not to win the MVP. Yeah, he threw for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the Seattle defense was the show of Super Bowl 48. That's the difference of this whole thing. Okay, and now, even when Aaron Rodgers went on his run before Super Bowl 45, he took a Green Bay team, barely made the postseason, and you win 3 games on the road in the playoffs. You beat Philly on the road, you beat Atlanta on the road, and then I think you beat Chicago on the road to go to, or was it New Orleans? No, it was Chicago. To make it to the Super Bowl. Then you beat the heavy-ranked and heavy-favored Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. And then the next year, Aaron Rodgers takes the Green Bay Packers to a 15-1 season. That is $22 million a year numbers. Hands down, Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league today. Now, I pulled up the story. Now, Russell Wilson is in the final year of his rookie deal, set to make $1.54 million in 2015. He is the ideal quarterback that will make a lot more than that. I agree with that. If he turns down $21 million a year, he's a nut. More of a nut than Des Bryant. NFL's top-earning quarterbacks on average, Aaron Rodgers, $22 million, Ben Roethlisberger, $21.85 million, Cam Newton, $20.76 million, Matt Ryan, $20.75 million, and Joe Flacco, $20.1 million. So, if he takes this deal, he will be the 3rd most paid quarterback in the NFL, which I don't think is that bad, people. I don't think it's that bad. Russell Wilson, I've always loved as a quarterback. I love the way he presents himself on the field with the media. He always says the right things. I always love his tone, and I love how he backs it up on the field. He's a Super Bowl champion in his own right. I get that. And I will admit, when Russell Wilson came in, that's when Seattle started building the team around him. And their unbelievable defense. But guys, is Russell Wilson really ready to be paid this much? I mean, I guess you can make the argument with Cam Newton now getting $20 million a year. I guess you can make the argument with, Matt Ryan, even though Atlanta's not doing so hot. So a lot of people are picking Atlanta to be good this year, too. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But if he's to turn down $21 million, he's crazy. Absolutely crazy to turn down $21 million. Because, again, Seattle already looks like they're about to break the bank with this deal, which is going to be bad when your Legion of Boom guys need to be re-signed and they can't be. So you could say goodbye to them. So if Seattle wants to do this right, keep it at $21 million. Russell Wilson needs to play by Seattle's rules. Take the $21 million, which is a great deal, a great contract. He'd be a nut to turn it down. I feel $21 million is meeting halfway. I feel that's fair. So take the $21 million. Go out and win a Super Bowl with Seattle next year, if you can. That's a question, if you can. You just signed a big tight end in Jimmy Graham, or traded for a big tight end in Jimmy Graham. Oh, excuse me. And now that pretty much completes your offense. Your defense is still pretty good. Everybody's healthy now. Chancellor, Sherman, they're all healthy. Take the $21 million, become a richer man, and then go out and win a Super Bowl with Seattle. That's what you got to do. That's what you have to do right now. I understand Russell Wilson put up great numbers in the last 2 or 3 years, but is he really worth $26 million right now? I really don't think so. That's the reality of the situation right now. I don't think he's worth that much money. Not yet. Aaron Rodgers took a lot to prove himself and earn that much money over guys like Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco. He did a lot to prove himself after Brett Favre left, and it took him a while to prove himself. It took him a very long time to prove himself that he was going to be the next franchise quarterback in Green Bay. Russell Wilson, I believe, has done that for Seattle. You think about it, a third-round pick, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL today. I absolutely agree with that. But I don't think he's shown enough to earn $26 million. And you have to look at the benefits of the team as well, because if he were to get signed for $26 million, how else are you going to sign your other weapons, like Chancellor and Sherman? You could say goodbye to your big defense. That's the reality of it. Bottom line, Russell Wilson, take the $21 million. All right, you will be the highest paid NFL quarterback one day if you keep it up. If you keep up this type of play, where you're flirting with Super Bowls, NFC Championship games every year, you will earn that money. I promise. You will earn that money, but you're not ready for it yet. Take a long-term deal. Take $21 million and leave it at that. Take a quick break on SMC Sports. When we come back, we'll close out the last hour with MLB rumors, trade talks, Hall of Fame weekend, etc. 27 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour. 973-655-4256. Sean McChesney in the studios on SMC Sports 90.3 FM. Back after this. All right, 30 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports, 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney in the WMSC studios. You're also listening live on WMSCRadio.com and on the Live 365 app. A lot of MLB talked about today, not done yet. We're going to close the show with MLB. Talked a lot of NFL, a little bit of college football, New Jersey Jackals, Gold Cup. Again, Gold Cup final tonight in Philadelphia. Our WMSC Assistant News Director, Juan Contla, will be running the WMSC Sports Twitter live from Philadelphia, so catch the updates at WMSC Sports if you're not watching the game. So, shout out to Juan for doing that for us. Thank you very much, considering a lot of us aren't very familiar or knowledgeable with soccer like he is. So, Juan the wild card. Thank you, Juan. So, A lot more MLB to talk about. Again, a lot of trade deadline updates. The biggest one coming literally, I'm talking like a half hour ago, Johnny Cueto signing with the traded to the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City Royals already adding to their impressive offense, and I think that is the stepping stone that they needed for the postseason. Because Kansas City, hands down, probably the best team in the American League right now. So, other news, though, Houston acquiring Scott Kazmir from Oakland. Pittsburgh gets Aramis Ramirez. Obviously, the Mets trade Uribe and Johnson for some minor league prospects. Connor Gilsap to Anaheim for cash. Now, looking at the leaders in the standings right now, we'll start with the American League. Yankees lead the East, 5.5 over Toronto. Kansas City, 6.5 over Minnesota in the Central. Anaheim, half a game over Houston in the West. NL East, Washington, 3-game lead over the Mets. NL Central, 7-game lead over Pittsburgh. And, that's weird because at the beginning of the All-Star break, Pittsburgh was only 2 out. And Pittsburgh's still playing great baseball, but St. Louis, 63-34, best team in baseball by far. And then you got the Dodgers leading the West, again, who got that whipping by the Mets last night. 56-43, 2-game lead over San Francisco, who is 8-1 in their last 9 since coming back from the break. Now, looking at some of the disappointing teams of this year, 2 teams come to mind. First one has to be Boston. 43-55 on the year. And they're 1-9 in their last 10. Last in the AL East. A team with very high expectations. When they signed Sandoval and they signed Ramirez, that got them nowhere. All it did was get Sandoval in trouble for liking Instagram photos in the Turner Field bathrooms while they were losing. And the pitching that was supposed to be dominant is 28th in the league, and they can't win on the road. This Boston Red Sox team, I picked at the beginning of the year to go back to the World Series. I thought John Farrell, who first year got his team to win the World Series, then in 2014, a dead finish in last, which was their second in 3 years. And now this year will probably be the third and fourth in 4 years to finish last in the AL East. I thought this will be the year for Boston to turn it around. Now, Boston was haunted with a lot of injuries last year, not great plays, not with, all that stuff. So you figured, okay, if the team's healthy, the signing of Hanley Ramirez and Pablo Sandoval, that would shake everything up a little bit. Didn't work whatsoever. It didn't work. It's very unfortunate because, again, I picked Boston-Washington in the World Series on opening day when we were on John Galletly's show, Speaking of Sports. I picked those 2 teams to go to the World Series. Now, Washington looks like they're going to go to the playoffs. Boston looks like they've got no shot. They're 12, 11 and a half back? Unbelievable. So, another disappointing team I thought was Miami. They're 41-56. They're 7.5 back in the NL East. A team, again, that I gave better expectations to than the New York Mets. Because at the beginning of the year, the Mets had big expectations to go 83 wins, to go 84 wins, go for a wild card, go for the NL East. Because, again, by now, Washington was supposed to have 60 wins. So the NL East is still winnable for the Mets. But at the beginning of the year, I gave Miami more than the Mets. I gave them better expectations. D. Gordon having a great year. Giancarlo Stanton having great years. But where did it get them? They fired Mike Redmond at the midpoint. And then they brought in a general manager who has no experience managing the game. No experience playing the game. And for the record, Colin Cowherd is completely wrong with, baseball being too complex. And I'm not going to get into that story because I don't want to get myself in trouble either. So, just for the record, Colin Cowherd fired from ESPN for his comments about Dominican baseball players. Baseball can be a complex game. Let me say that. It looks easy, and sometimes it is, but situations, strategies, etc., a guy who has never managed a baseball team, if you put Dan Jennings and Tony La Russa on 2 sides and you call it Game 7 of the World Series, who do you think is going to win? Tony La Russa. Hands down one of the best managers in the game. Oh, but, baseball's not too complex. Yes, it is. At least, sometimes it can be. again, you put those two, you put one of the greatest managers in baseball history on one side and Dan Jennings on the other. Tony La Russa is going to win the game based off strategies, situations that he puts the Cardinals in, etc., etc., etc. Tony La Russa is going to win that matchup 100 times out of 100. That's the difference. Now Dan Jennings, as he gets more experience, he'll have more strategies, know what to do in situations, and he'll become a better manager over time. But for Miami to just hire a guy like Dan Jennings, I heard Jeff Conine, he's played before. That would have been a great fit in Miami. I heard possibly Craig Counsell, but then he went to Milwaukee. I heard a lot of guys who would be good for that team. And then Dan Jennings, a guy who was the general manager the night before, and now you're the manager of the team. You've never played, you've never managed, and now you see why Miami is 15 games under 500. It was a big disappointment for this team. Big disappointment. And that's another thing. Miami's got some trust issues, too. You know, remember when Joe Girardi was a manager of the Florida Marlins and was fired after 1 year? He couldn't even get the ball rolling in Florida before he was fired. Unbelievable. Freddie Gonzalez, same thing. Couldn't even get the ball rolling and he got fired. Very weird situations in Miami and Boston. But now, it's almost like, all right, and then breaking news official, Reds agree to trade Johnny Cueto to Royals. Sources say 7-6, 2.62 ERA this season. So Johnny Cueto will be packing his bags and heading to Kansas City, which I feel is probably the trade of the deadline. Because Houston showed interest. A lot of teams showed interest. San Francisco showed interest. LA showed interest. And then out of nowhere, Kansas City comes in and they win the battle. Unbelievable. You know, good for Kansas City because you know what? I've always wanted, ever since last year, I want to see that team win the World Series. I've really wanted to see it. But again, going back to the disappointment in Miami, you know, the game can be complex. It really can be. And, you know, at the same time, I feel bad for Colin because he's had 10 years with ESPN. He's probably one of the smartest guys on the air, one of the most honest guys on the air. But at the end of the day, his comments on Thursday and Friday were a little too honest for the air. And instead of a more of an apology on Friday, he just gave stats on why his comments were true. And that wasn't right. That was not right at all for him to do. You know, I understand it's an opinion. You're entitled to it. But you know what? Instead of just really apologizing, which he did, he gave facts and stats on why his comments were true about the Dominican Republic. And that wasn't right to do on the air. I'm sorry. I like Colin. I didn't agree with the firing until I saw what he did that Friday. So, for him to have done that, yeah, I would have pulled the plug too. And he's leaving ESPN anyway. He was leaving this week. So, I believe he's going to Fox Sports. So, it's not really too bad. But, again, you didn't want to leave that way. He's been with ESPN since, 2004, 2005. But for him to just give facts about why his comments about Dominican ball players and Dominican Republic were true, I'm sorry. That was crossing the line. It really was. And I probably would have fired him too. You know, I hope he does well at Fox Sports. He was leaving ESPN anyway, so really no harm, no foul, except, you know, this is going to be overlooked on your career for the rest of your life. So, as my phone is blowing up on this trade. So yeah, Colin's done with ESPN for those comments that he made, but the point is, baseball can be complex, and that's why I don't think Dan Jennings should be the manager in Miami. I think he should go put his shirt and tie back on, and he should go hire somebody who has experience. That's my opinion. So we're going to take a quick break here on SMC Sports. Coming up, we'll look at teams to watch. We will discuss Hall of Fame inductions, why A-Rod will never be in the Hall of Fame. Pedro said it best last night. 40 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour. You're listening to SMC Sports. 973-655-4256 is the number to call on 90.3 FM, and we'll be back right after this. Every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., tune into my show, SMC Sports, right here on 90.3 WMSC, or online at WMSCradio.com, or on the Live 365 app. Join me, Sean McChesney, as I discuss the latest and greatest sports topics across the country, ranging from the professionals to right here for Montclair State Athletics. I will be covering everything, including the MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA, and much, much more. Also, do not forget to follow the show on Twitter at SMC Sports WMSC. Kick back, relax, and make sure to listen to SMC Sports every Wednesday from 1 to 4 right here on 90.3 WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Stay tuned for more. And 43 minutes past the 12 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports, 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. And as you can hear from my Shoma, it's not Wednesday, it's Sunday. That's just because I didn't really feel like being off the air for 2 weeks. We won't be on the air this Wednesday. I'll be on vacation in Virginia. We will be back on the air Wednesday, August 5th, 1 to 4, as normally scheduled. So we'll be off the air about a week and a half. I had a prior commitment this past Wednesday, and I wasn't comfortable being off the air for 2 weeks, so I postponed the show to today. Sunday, 10 to 1, I thought it went pretty well. Discussed a lot of MLB, again, not done yet. A lot of NFL as well. Some New Jersey Jackals and their updates as well. Hold on one second, because I think we have a Jackals update as well. So this came in at about 10 this morning. The New Jersey Jackals came back twice last night to defeat the Sussex County Miners 5-3. The game was a battle of the pitchers. After Miners' Johnny Bladell hit a 2-run home run in the first, Jackals pitcher Gabriel Perez wouldn't let another batter reach second base until the 7th inning. Miners' pitcher held the Jackals to only 3 hits throughout the 5 innings. And an RBI triple in the bottom of the 7th thanks to Jared Schwalbieber led the Jackals to tie the game at 3. Matt Helms then drove him in on a go-ahead run. The Jackals earned an insurance run in the bottom of the 8th. Perez is now 7-1 on the season, and Hector Nilo earned his 15th save for the Jackals. Both teams face off again today at 2 p.m. for a doubleheader. Stay tuned to WMSC and follow WMSC Sports on Twitter for coverage of the Jackals all season long, and let's go Jackals. So that's your Jackals update. Jackals are doing very well this year as well. But now going back to MLB, we'll look at 2 teams that I thought at the beginning of the year had no shot to go anywhere. And the Houston Astros and the Minnesota Twins have to be the 2 most surprising teams in baseball this year. Houston, 55-44. They're a game out in the AL West. Now, they went a little cold before the All-Star break, and Anaheim got red hot. But the AL West could come down to the last week of the year with Anaheim and Houston. Houston is 25 in hitting, which is why they're having problems, but they're 9th in pitching. Houston's got guys like Altuve and Carrera and Springer who are doing outstandingly well this year. And Kazmir adds to an already impressive pitching staff. The team should make the playoffs, but they have a shot still to win the AL West. You know, it's July 26th. It's not October 1st yet. Altuve's batting .304, Carrera .288, Springer .264, but Springer's leading the team in home runs with 13, 29 RBIs. Altuve's got 43 RBIs. He's .432 in slugging. Carrera's .476 in slugging. The Houston Astros team as a whole has come together to be one of the most surprising and impressive teams in the league this year. And I think anybody could say that as well. You know, they've been a very impressive team to watch. They always have been for this year. The last 2 years, they've been absolute garbage. I remember them being absolutely terrible the last few years. And then when they moved to the American League, you figured, okay, maybe they're not going to be as bad. Just as terrible. Just as bad. The only reason they didn't finish last in the AL West last year was because Texas had a meltdown. You remember the comments Ian Kinsler made when he was traded to Detroit? I hope they go 0-162. He was pretty damn close, with Texas being the worst team in baseball last year. But this year, Houston is really tearing it up. 55-44, 11 games over 500, and this team could be set to win the AL West. Definitely probably going to make the playoffs. And this Minnesota Twins team as well. They're 6.5 back in the AL Central. Kansas City's running away with it. But they're one of the best pitching teams in baseball. 3.85 ERA, 576 strikeouts. Phil Hughes is 9-6, 3.93 ERA. Kyle Gibson, 8-7, 3.19 ERA. And Brian Dozier has to have been one of the Minnesota best weapons. 96 hits, 21 home runs, 55 RBIs. He's got a .256 batting average, but he has an .840 OPS. Joe Mauer, being Joe Mauer again, 98 hits, 6 home runs, 43 RBIs. Torrey Hunter, 16 home runs, 53 RBIs. These two teams, I feel, have been the most surprising teams in baseball. Besides, obviously, the New York Yankees. But for teams you expected to go nowhere, these are the two most surprising teams. Now, I thought the Yankees would be around 500. They're not going to make the playoffs for the third straight year, blah, blah, blah. But Houston and Minnesota, I expected to be 20 games under 500, dead last in their divisions, and they have proven everybody wrong. And both teams look like they're going to make the playoffs. Houston more than Minnesota right now, because you know Houston is first in the wild card right now. Could be first in the division very soon. You never know. I mean, they're only a half game out. But now you look at other things going around the MLB today. Hall of Fame inductions will be today. Looking at the guys going in, Randy Johnson representing the Diamondbacks. First Diamondbacks representative in history to go in the Hall of Fame. 97.3% percentage of the vote. Pedro Martinez will represent the Boston Red Sox, 91.1% of the vote. John Smoltz, obviously representing the Atlanta Braves, 82.9%. Craig Biggio, obviously representing the Houston Astros, 82.7%. Now, a lot of people asked Pedro Martinez last night the chances of A-Rod going into the Hall of Fame, and he said it perfectly. You know, A-Rod's got the numbers, absolutely, but it doesn't change the fact on what he did. Doesn't change the fact that he cheated twice. He lied about it the second time, sued his own union, and then got caught in the act. I have to agree with Pedro. A-Rod has the numbers, absolutely. And you know what? Without these convictions, and maybe, it's the same reasons that Roger Clemens isn't in the Hall of Fame, same reasons Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, Andy Pettitte. It's the same reasons why these guys aren't in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds, same story. It's the same reasons on why these guys are not in the Hall of Fame and never will be in the Hall of Fame, is that they cheated the game. Pete Rose will never be in the Hall of Fame either until he's dead. Because at least Pete Rose never cheated on himself. You know, he bet on games, yes, as a player and as a manager, but he never bet on himself. He never cheated on himself. He never took PEDs. All of those 4,000 hits counted because they were real. You know, A-Rod hit 670-something home runs. How many of those count, really? Barry Bonds hit 762. How many of those are without steroids? All these questions come up when you're trying to put guys in the Hall of Fame. And you know what? It's understandable. It's the same reasons why Clemens isn't in. Pettitte, when he has time, he's probably not going to go in because he used PEDs. Sosa, Canseco, McGwire, Bonds, Palmeiro, all those guys. It's the same reasons why they're not in the Hall of Fame. And it's the same reasons why A-Rod and all those guys will never be in the Hall of Fame. They'll never go in. It's sad, yes, because they all had great careers. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that they all cheated. They all cheated. Okay? Sosa took it. McGwire, Canseco, they all took steroids. Clemens took it. Pettitte took it. Palmeiro took it. Bonds took it. Just enough about these guys trying to go in the Hall of Fame because they're never going to go in the Hall of Fame. Enough already. You know, it's the same questions from reporters time and time again. You know, you think A-Rod will be in the Hall of Fame? You think Clemens will go in? No, they're never going in. And it's sad, too, because they all had great careers. Roger Clemens pitched for 20-plus years. He had a great career. Mark McGwire, great career. Bonds, great career. Canseco, great career. Doesn't change the fact that they all cheated. And that's the one reason why they all won't go in the Hall of Fame. One reason and one reason only. Sad, yes. It doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. It's sad, too. And, I was looking at this other story the other day. Chances of extra netting in the ballparks. I would have to agree with that. There have been 2 incidents in Fenway Park this year where one of them, a fan was literally fighting for her life for days. And the other one, a girl's head was split open because of bad hit in the stands. Now, I would agree. Extra netting has to be in the ballparks. You see it in college stadiums all the time. Extra netting all around. I wouldn't necessarily agree with foul pole to foul pole, though, because I think the netting should go where people have lesser time to react. Like, for example, in 2008, my mom, dad, uncle, and aunt went to the home run derby in Yankee Stadium. It was either Lance Berkman or Josh Hamilton. Pretty sure it was Josh Hamilton. Hit a laser towards them, but they had enough time to get out of the way. They were sitting around the right field line, somewhere along those lines. They all got out of the way in time. So that's where I feel like the netting should stop. I don't think it should go foul pole to home plate to back to foul pole, because I feel that takes away some of the... Because, who wants to sit behind a net in right field? I wouldn't. Home plate, yes. First base, not really, but it's a safety hazard now. Then you look at foul by the right field foul pole. No, I don't want one over there. I have time to react. It should be, I would say, around a little bit over to the right field side. That's it, and the left field side. It shouldn't go foul pole to foul pole. Really shouldn't. Because then it's just like, if you've got time to react, you shouldn't need protection, because there are signs all around the ballpark anyway. I understand there are signs around the ballpark, but when you're sitting first row, if you're sitting first row behind a dugout on the first base side, and somebody smacks a foul ball at you, you have no time to react. Zero time to react. So you're not going to fool me with all this crap that, they've got signs, they've got this, they've got that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, again, if you're sitting first row behind the dugout, somebody smacks a foul ball at you, it's over. You have no time to react. You'll be lucky if you get out of the way. But if you're all the way on the right field foul line, you've got time. You've got time to react. That's where the netting should stop. But that's up for the MLB to decide. They're trying to push that ruling already to make the ballpark safer, and I think they should. I think it's time. It's been discussed for a very long time, and that should be the case. Because you know what? No, I remember in 2007, the third base coach in the minor leagues died because he took a foul ball right to the head. And in 2008, the MLB had their base coaches wearing helmets. So how long is it going to take for the extra netting to come into ballparks? Because it's really time to start protecting the fans better. It really is time. Because I'll tell you something, sitting first row behind a dugout is probably an incredible experience, but at the end of the day, how unsafe do you feel? I would feel unsafe as hell sitting there. Like, you've got no time to react. You've got nothing. So, it's better you add the netting. It's better you make the ballpark safer. And more importantly, it is time to finally keep the fans safe in their own ballparks. They pay good money to go. Take their kids out to the ballpark. Take the wife. Take the girlfriend. Take the fiance. Whatever. Or take the boyfriend. Whatever. Last thing you want to do is get beamed in the head by a foul ball because you had no time to react. That's my argument. That's going to close up SMC Sports for this week. Thank you guys for listening. Again, I will be on vacation in Virginia this week, so we will not be on the air Wednesday. Instead, we will be back on the air Wednesday, August 5th. Wednesday, 1 to 4 p.m., August 5th. So, thank you guys so much for listening. Got a lot of MLB discussed, a lot of football, and just rulings in MLB, etc., etc. So, thank you guys so much for listening to SMC Sports, and we will be back on the air Wednesday, August 5th. So, thank you guys very much, and we'll see you then.